hearing the charges against the governor yesterday following his impeachment by members of Kiambu County on the 19th of December. Of course, they accuse him of abuse of office, gross misconduct, and gross violation of the Constitution, the County Government Act, and the Public Finance Management Act. If they uphold any of the impeachment charges, Waitito will cease to hold office in line with Section 33(7) of the County Government Act. By operation of Article 182 of the Constitution, his deputy, Dr. James Nyoro, will take over as Kiambu's new governor for the remainder of the term.
Okay.
Right.
We'll look at...
What if he challenges this matter in court? Because he can.
We'll look at this in detail in the half hour. First, let's take a look at the other headlines. MPs allege scheme to impeach Uhuru.
This is a headline that is absolutely a replica of yesterday's headline.
Of the
Ruto
alleged palace coup.
Same sentiment, different rhetoric, but essentially it is heading east.
Now this one is coming from the other side, right?
Yep.
So allies of ODM chief Raila accused DP Ruto's camp of plotting the president's ouster at Naivasha retreat, but Senate Majority Leader Murkomen dismisses the claim as hot air by desperate opposition MPs. Now, of course, this is what they came out to say yesterday. And about 30 MPs held a press conference yesterday, and they're saying, other than discussing the BBI and the planned parallel rallies by the Tanga team, they also mooted the idea of bringing forth an impeachment motion to the National Assembly. Now, as much as, we can just call it hot air, but let's look at what basically they're saying. This meeting was discussing an impeachment. They have mooted that idea, just looking at the fact that they had 178 MPs who were turned up in Naivasha, and they claimed there are some others who were out of the country who would have wanted to be there, but they were unfortunately unable to attend physically. They were there in spirit, so they could moot that idea. To impeach a president, you need 2/3 of the members of the National Assembly.
You see, the thing is, we've already propelled
260 something.
We've already propelled this conversation. We've already gone to that.
Taken it to the next level.
There's a possibility of impeachment, and now we are looking at what the Constitution says or what it doesn't say.
Is it possible? Is it a possibility? Even before we accept that these, what they are mooting is possibility, we just need to look at, all right, what grounds would they have anyway?
Was it said in the first place?
You want to of course they didn't say it. All right, and these MPs claim that there are moles in that meeting are the ones who told them that this is what was happening. Is it even a viability? Of course, it's always a viability that somebody can bring an impeachment motion. The fact that it flops doesn't matter. We always remember that there was a motion of no confidence against Cabinet Minister William Ruto at one time. We always remember. It flopped, yes, but you will always remember. The fact that it's brought is something big. However, the viability of it, the grounds, what grounds would you have? The Constitution stipulates a president can only be impeached on gross violation of the Constitution or where there are serious reasons for believing that the president has committed a crime under national or international law or for gross misconduct. Oh, okay, so which of those?
Which is it?
Which of those is a possibility? Politicians and their games.
Anything can happen, my friend.
Actually, anything can be said. As to whether it happens.
Right, anything can be said. So in this case, this is what I'm saying. We've already taken a million steps forward. We don't even actually know if there are, if this was said. We don't even know if that's the notion. We don't even know if there was, what the conversation was really. And already here we are, we're putting it in the minds of people that, well, in case this would happen, this is then what the outcome would be. And I think we just need to hold up and take a breath for a moment.
Our guest yesterday, the ODM Secretary General, if we were to look at this, one could argue that he did have a point. He did have a point in that we, the media, also contribute to this in the way we
jumping the gun, absolutely.
Yes, but again, we jump the gun, as you're putting it, because the gun has been presented to us. In this case,
it's MPs who came and said this.
And said these things. So the media has extrapolated and gone on to give it wings. But you know something? Look at the extremities. If you listen to, say, the utterances that are attributed to the Senator Murkomen, these are sentiments that have been uttered by the other side of the divide as well. These people are desperate. Now, this was with reference to attending these BBI rallies. Now, of significance, it seems at that very same forum, it was then reported that it was said that the Tanga MPs are no longer welcomed to these BBI rallies. Now, this is a government rally.
It's public.
Yes, you don't need to be in government to attend. Not really, you don't. All those Wananchi who we saw the Mamagina waterfront, they are neither MPs, nor senators, nor presidents, or former prime ministers. They're just ordinary citizens of the country, and they attended. How do you bar someone from attending a public function? It's like saying you are barred from attending Jamhuri Day. How?
Not possible.
I think it's a recognition of it. You know, the way politicians have given themselves that high ground.
That role.
Yes. So if you attend and you're among the throngs of people,
Of
you
course,
have not attended.
you've not attended because
You want to
nobody
be on
saw
the-
you,
you
your
want to
name was
be
not
on
called
the
out.
On the podium.
You want to be on the
Right.
podium and you want to be given an opportunity to speak. The same thing they were complaining, the Tanga people, that yes, we came and very many of us were there, but they were not recognized. We'd like to recognize the presence of Honorable C.T. Muga, Salimia Wananchi kidogo, dakika moja.
Sema kitu.
Sema kitu.
Kitu.
Dakika moja, you know?
And then you're captured on TV. The nation has seen you. This is what they want.
This is how it works.
Right.
Other headlines.
Other headlines: coronavirus fears as KNH admits a student. Unfortunately, now what we saw in terms of hitting the shores of Kenya. Passenger flew in on Kenya Airways flight from China, where the death toll from the disease is over 100.
That news is behind the times. The death toll has gone way beyond that 100 that they're writing over there.
Right. So I mean,
Those
yesterday the
infected
student
have gone way beyond 6,000.
Imagine.
right.
Yes.
So this particular
Carry
passenger
on.
had high fever, right?
Right, so he was the first suspected case of coronavirus in the country, according to the Ministry of Health. The passenger arrived at the JKIA from Guangzhou and after screening was found to have a fever. He's said to have left Wuhan in China, of course, the epicenter of the epidemic, that has so far killed more than 100 people, according to this report. According to the ministry, the patient was first put under isolation at JKIA before he was then moved to KNH, infectious diseases unit. The tests are currently being conducted at the National Influenza Center. The suspected case remains in isolation at KNH while investigations and laboratory tests are undertaken, according to CS Cicely Karaoke. So, of course, there are ways in which you then can protect yourself. And, of course, what we can see from this is that there's going to be panic because there's been complaints also coming from China, from a lot of Kenyans in terms of how they are being protected and how they are being handled. And those who may then travel, of course, are at risk, and people are waiting to see what would happen after that. However, I think at this point, what has been done so far is actually good.
It's a commendable thing. It
I would
shows that
think so.
our alert systems
In
are
this
very
case
much in place.
is in place and it is working. It would be good to see that such would continue.
So there's screening of passengers as they arrive at the
At the
JKIA.
airport.
It's,
And
not,
then-
it's not obstrusive, so you wouldn't even notice.
You
You wouldn't even
notice.
know that it was
No, you
happening.
wouldn't.
They
Absolutely.
just pulled on
You
the
walk
side and then
through-
asked,
Yes.
we have
Yeah.
noticed that you have a fever. Tell us.
Where are you coming
Where you come
from, and how have you been
Who have you
experiencing?
interacted with? Right. And then, of course, the immediate protocol is take them to this facility.
There's a sick
that
bay
they put them
even
in-
within
even the airport itself.
Yes.
Right.
Good stuff. Good stuff there by the government and the Ministry of Health. Yep. Win for hospital in effort to bar doctor of a fatal breast surgery. Now, a court has temporarily barred a doctor from practicing as he fights accusations of neglect following the death of a woman in a botched breast surgery. Court of Appeal judges Wanjiru Karanja, Martha Koomwe and Sankale Olenkantai, in their ruling, agreed that Nairobi Hospital had a weighty case which warranted the court to intervene and order that Professor Stanley Ominda Hainga should not continue practicing at the hospital until the appeal is settled. Now, this is after what the Appeal and Labour Relations Court had done in 2018 by suspending a letter issued by the Nairobi Hospital which stripped the plastic and reconstructive surgery expert of rights to admit his patients at the Nairobi Hospital. This follows the death of June Wanza Mulupi, who died the same year at the Nairobi Hospital after a failed breast augmentation surgery at Sergio Dam Healthcare Limited, a health facility owned by Professor Kainga. Right, so This lady had gone to Professor Kainga's private facility, had undergone some surgery, something went wrong. He admitted the patient at the Nairobi hospital. She died at this hospital. So after that, now the Nairobi hospital had said, no, we will not allow you to continue admitting your patients here or coming here. He had taken the matter to court. The Labour Relations Court had agreed with him, and then now the Court of Appeal has agreed with the hospital.
At what point does the Labour Court in this country ever disagree with anyone?
With the employee.
With an employee.
It always agrees with the employee.
It's
It
the
disagrees with the
With the
employer.
employee.
Oh,
Yes, it
it
disagrees with the
disagrees with the
employer
employer.
and agrees. So what is it about our laws that seems to have skewed it? Because I don't think that the judges are being unfair.
Yeah.
All they're doing is following the law. So what is it about our laws?
The law has become more protective of the employee. Always. Because you look at them as the employee as the weaker person in this particular case. So when they have grounds, the court is basically told, listen to those grounds first. First of all, the first thing that you do is say, all right, status quo. Just like we've seen with Professor Kema of the Nairobi University. First thing is status quo. An employee has come to complain about the employer and how the employer has conducted some affairs. First, stop. Let's hear this. Yep.
Well, I think, of course, many would argue that it's a good stance to take. Hear it from where they're coming from, and then you can then understand whether there are grounds.
Yeah.
Of course, many have called it that it is actually the employee's court in
Yeah,
this
it's
case.
the employee's
because
court.
it's the employee's court in this case, because it's very rare that sides against the employee have ever been taken by the court, or that are taken more regularly than not. Right.
I have something here. Nairobi County Assembly is always in the news these days. So yesterday there was a threat by some of the majority side to impeach, to pass a vote of no confidence against their chief whip. Today, it's reprieve as City County Finance Officer returns. Operations have resumed at City Hall's Finance Department following the return of Finance Executive Pauline Kahiga, who was ousted by MCAs last week. Kahiga has now taken control of the office, averting a crisis which was occasioned by the lack of an official to head the finance docket. The finance docket in all the 47 county governments is critical because it's responsible for the signing and approval of county expenditure, and a hitch in the department spells doom for the local government. So, Ms. Kahiga yesterday intimated that she had resumed her duties and was back to serving her people. So MCAs had alleged that she was in office illegally. Her absence threw the City Hall into a crisis. The finance department, as we've said, is at the heart of the county's operations. Because this is the person who signs. Any money that comes out, kidole niya huyu.
So what are the MCAs negotiating about?
Yeah. That's one of those.
Because they seem to have relented rather quickly.
We can kick you out. No, there was actually an issue. This matter had gone all the way even to the government, right? And they had attempted to gazette the removal of this person. So they had sent this gazette to the government printer, and the government press chief executive officer Mwenda Njoka, who is basically the government printer, had rejected it, saying it was illegal and adrift to the law. Through a letter dated January 13th last year, Mwenda Njoka explained that Igambi's appointment, they had appointed, so the chief officer had appointed somebody else. So Mwenda Njoka is saying that other person's appointment was done irregularly in contravention of Section 35 of the County Government Act number 17 and Article 179 of the Constitution that bestows such powers on the governor. The Constitution does not envisage an appointment of a substantive officer by a person in an acting capacity. So we have an acting county secretary, all right? So after the MCAs kicked out Ms. Kahiga, the acting county secretary, of course looking at the importance of this office, had appointed somebody and had forwarded this to the government printer. So it goes into the Gazette notice. The government printer said, look, who are you? What powers do you have to appoint this person? I am not participating in these shenanigans. Sorry.
Well, speaking of a sorry state, you realize we still understand that there's still locusts in the country, right? And the locusts march on Machakos, Kitui, and Embu. Farmers are in desperate battle against locusts. They've been invaded by desert locusts, and they've resorted to traditional ways of fighting the swarms. While the state continues to say that they lack enough planes for spraying. Yesterday, the insects made their way to Masaku in Machakos County after wreaking havoc in Embu. They destroyed millet, maize, sorghum and pasture in Mbera South before aerial spraying by the government reached the region. And as the spraying in 10 counties is constrained by inadequate resources, residents are becoming frustrated. Masaku locals yesterday spent more than 15 hours battling the swarms using whatever resources at their disposal. Wow. They whistled, they beat drums, screamed, stoned, and even cursed the locusts.
Yeah. That's the spirit.
When all that had failed, the cavalry was called in. Hundreds of screaming primary and secondary school children were released from classes to join their parents and teachers in battle. The swarms landed last evening. We've been doing all we can to drive them away because we will not be left with anything if they eat. To eat if we don't, according to Mr. Motoko Mailu. After hours of screaming and cursing,
he was hoarse.
There was
we cannot
do this anyway.
His interview.
There was reprieve with the arrival of a plane which sprayed for about an hour. Villagers appealed to the government to prioritize the fighting of locusts. Locals and officials in the affected regions have questioned the effectiveness of the 230 million shilling aerial spraying campaign.
That's on page what?
This is on page 11 of The Nation.
Page 11 of The Nation. Now, this is where, again, I agree with what Sifuno was saying. I think we give prominence to nonsense.
I mean...
Page 1 here, talking about impeachment of a president and all.
Which we don't even know is...
Which is a rumor being propagated by somebody. And yet, we have not seen a frontal, a page 1 photo of the locusts.
Can you imagine?
We haven't seen a page 1 photo of the devastation left after the locusts have gone.
Not even page 1. Apart from it being mentioned, some pictorial evidence of it would go a long way. Just show this is what the
international media have come in here and they've basically just done pictorials and just showing this is what the swarm of locusts looked like.
Well, we have one picture in Machakos. We have one picture here on this page 11 with a swarm, and it's actually quite terrible. But I think this is one of the first that we've seen.
Should be on the front page.
It should be on the front page.
This should be the front page every day so that basically everybody just knows this is what we need to do.
So we've pulled children out of school. They've been screaming and beating drums and shouting and cursing at these swarms for 15 hours.
They were probably pulled out during the period for PE.
It's good they have physical education.
Today, during PE, we are going to be shouting at locusts.
Right. So 15 hours of this PE took place.
It's devastating.
And it was seen that it was the children, primary and secondary school children from different schools then who would come out and
community
help.
effort.
I'm telling you. And then after all of this, a plane arrives and sprays for 1 hour.
And then we should go back to Mandera, Garissa, Wajir, Embu, Isiolo, and Meru. We should see how is it. How what have these locusts left behind?
Well, let me tell you, the pests have spread in Isiolo, Samburu, Mandera, Marsabit, Wajir, Garissa, Kitui, Baringo, Turkana, Embu, and Tana River. Samburu is the worst affected, with locals fighting 14 swarms, including fresh invasions. Did we not say this before? And we must understand again that one swarm has over 70 million locusts. They're busy fighting 14. The locusts have destroyed 900,000 acres and more than 13,000 square kilometers of pasture in Isiolo and Mandera counties, respectively. Agriculture PS...
Where is the evidence? We need to see photos.
We would like to see, of course. Agriculture PS Hamadi Boga last week said the war on locusts is strained by a shortage of personnel, pesticides, and poor roads, really. While witnessing aerial spraying in Lengusaka, Samburu County, Professor Bogo said only 5 planes for spraying and 4 for surveillance are available. On Monday, Desert Locust Control Organization Director Stephen Joka said another spraying aircraft had been procured. We have resorted to manual spraying as farmers continue to suffer, according to Mr. Roba. 120 settled areas have been affected. The Mandera devolved government has formed locust surveillance teams, trained about 20 people on the ground, spraying and sensitized locals on reporting the invasions. It's not, and now we have farmers in these areas of Garissa, Mandera, and Wajir saying their animals will starve to death because there is nothing for them to graze on. It's all gone.
We are facing a serious crisis in the country this year.
Yeah, it's all gone.
Serious crisis.
And
at some point, we'll start talking about, there's starvation, there's hunger, there's drought in the country.
Oh,
and
we can actually list these things, and they will come to pass, because these are trends that are known to us. When you have this sort of deluge, what often follows is a season of drought.
Yep.
And hunger is never really far behind from it.
Behind drought. Yeah.
And these are things, again, this Ministry of Agriculture has experts who can tell you these things in great detail and with great accuracy. And we don't really hear their voices, do we?
No.
Do we even hear of the progress that has been made, apart from the complaints of bad roads and
inadequate funds?
Inadequate spraying equipment?
No.
And even the methodology. So those that question, is aerial spraying the best? Is ground spraying better?
And aerial spray, what are they using?
And what effect does it have, especially the chemicals?
You recall there's
on
a
all the
gentleman who
others?
called in here once, and he took us through this process, and it was most illuminating. He said one of the things that he lamented was that we no longer used pyrethrum as a base for some of these things, and yet, he said pyrethrum, given that it's natural, it's nature's gift, it's nature's pesticide, gives to us as a pesticide. What we use are synthetics. And says these, unfortunately,
will have an effect.
And they have a side effect that may actually counter the very effect that you're trying to achieve. Yes.
Even this kind of spraying that we have, so it's going to affect pollinators and all. What else are we killing apart from just the locusts?
But unfortunately, this is the thing right here. This is why they said ground spraying, and the kind of pesticide or the kind of chemicals that they would use essentially would then not allow. Because you want to forget about the adult locusts. Their lifeline is really short. What you want to do is to get at nymph mode, and this is why ground spraying was absolutely necessary from the very beginning, because it is on the ground that they essentially hatch. It's on the ground that they hatch, and then from there they grow as they begin to eat the crop. That is why ground spraying was needed. Aerial spraying, we have been told at this point, is just is something you'll do to kill the swarms, but you will not deal with the problem literally at the ground. Vitukwa ground.
Yep, Vitukwa ground. It's one of those. Konza plays with fire. Stolen fuel lies in homes. So you know this place called Konza City, right? This area around Malili. There are very many enterprising people, and their enterprise is very simple. Steal, siphon fuel from trucks that are bringing fuel into the country and into the neighboring countries, and then sell the same fuel to locals. So when you steal that fuel and you siphon the fuel, where do you take it? You take it to the same house that you're living in. So we have very many illegal depots where fuel is being siphoned, and then it's being taken in drums and being kept in houses. So Konza residents of Konza area are staring at a calamity following the widespread sale of stolen fuel from backyards. A fire could easily wipe out an entire neighborhood, as the illegal trade in highly flammable products dispensed from plastic water tanks and metallic drums runs unabated. For months now, this syndicate siphons fuel from trucks ferrying various petroleum products loaded at the nearby Kenya Pipeline depot and feeds the thriving trade. The depot is about 4 kilometers from the highway, along a dirt road, which has helped the crooks. While they work outside the purview of the authorities, some officials could be part of the scheme. Of course, some officials are part of the scheme. Tens of homesteads have now been turned into filling stations.
Excellent.
Entrepreneurship at its best.
Take a drum.
The problem with that fuel is sometimes it's adulterated.
Yes, of course.
You don't know whether they've mixed diesel with super, with kerosene. You have no idea.
With water.
Yes, you will realize this when your vehicle combusts.
Yeah.
Then you realize, perhaps what I took isn't quite what I should have.
I should have.
If a fire just broke out here, it could be devastating. That's what the story is.
Remember the two incidences which followed in close succession. Shango in one area. Terrible. But again, why do people get so desperate so as to actually get into this sort of activities? What drives them? Because these tankers have been plying our roads for the longest time possible. Yes.
This trade has actually always been there.
It has, but the proportions we now see.
Spikes.
Yeah, the proportions we now see are alarming.
It gets spikes. So there's a spike at a certain point where you hear this time there's a lot of not adulteration, but there's a lot of theft of fuel along the pipeline itself. So people even go and get into the pipeline itself, and then there's the one of it's just siphoning fuel from the trucks. Remember the fire at pipeline a couple of years ago, where really many people were affected.
Many people were affected, in fact, and we were fortunate that more were not affected. Fuel, apart from just burning, it blows up.
Yep.
So anyway, there we are.
Big one. Remember, you can download the Standard e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store, and just one subscription fee. You can choose. You can make it either weekly, monthly, or annually. You get to access all of Standard Group's publications, including the every day we have a different pullout. So today, being Wednesday, the pullout is this one. Let me just show you what it's called. It's called The Hustle. Today's headline is, "At 48, I finally found my passion." Somebody started their business at the age of 48, and it's telling their story. The Hustle is today's pullout in the Standard. Yesterday was the Financial Standard. Monday is Crazy Mondays. Tomorrow is the one on the real estate sector, home and away. Friday is the Pulse Magazine Entertainment. Get all those with just one subscription fee. It's 6:30. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then the conversation continues.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. "24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Are you ready?
The Throwback Kings are at it again. DJ Pinye and DJ Nijo invite you for the second edition of Playback, a celebration of the music that defined the 80s and the 90s.
I'm taking you back. Throw your fist in the air, feel this.
Bring your old friends and your new friends to the Gossip Ultra Lounge at the Lavington Mall on Friday, 31st of January, and dance the night away to the music that defined an era. Limited tickets are available now on mook.com for only 1,000 shillings. No tickets will be sold at the venue. The party starts at 8 p.m. till dawn. Playback is about the show, the party, the vibe. Powered by Spice FM. Sugar, spice, and everything nice.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
What's happening on our roads, and also how the weather will affect our roads today. Looking at Mombasa, where we saw an accident on the Mombasa Malindi highway today. Expect some showers all the way from 8 a.m. till about 3 o'clock, and actually going through the day. Take a step over to Nakuru, where at 15 degrees this morning, it is going to be a rainy day all the way actually through to the end of the week. Eldoret, it's actually quite chilly this morning with rain and showers from this morning until about 5 o'clock. It's going to be constant. Coming back into Nairobi, of course, traffic has already started on Mombasa Road, where as of 6 o'clock it was bumper to bumper all the way from the Gateway Mall, and that is feeding its way through to Cabanas this morning. Thika Road, interestingly enough, right now, not much traffic. Let's see how that builds up in just a short while. We'll let you know what the rest of the roads look like. We'll take a look at Kisumu in a short while also and see what traffic looks like there. Anything that we should know about, give us a shout on Twitter on Spice FM KE, or give us a call on 0719 012 600. We'll see how we can keep moving. It is Wednesday, middle of the week. Let's see what it looks like shortly.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
In the Situation Room, this and every Monday to Friday mornings, Nduoko, City Muga, and Eric Latif. The live stream is up, Spice FM KE on Facebook, Spice FM KE on Twitter, and on Instagram, as well as YouTube, and www.spicefm.co.ke. If you're tuning in from Mombasa, you're on 87.9. Somebody in Kisumu is on 102.5. Those in Eldoret, 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi, and Nakuru, 96.0. Of course, Nairobi is 94.4. So the Senate is going to make a decision today on what's going to happen to their father. The headline on the Standard says, Baba Toka, D-Day for Waitito as Senate decides on his fate. Baba Yao, Baba Toka. Right? So, of course, he appeared in the Senate yesterday, and the Senate votes today on whether to keep Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waitito in office or send him home. Senators yesterday heard how Waitito influenced award of county tenders worth millions of shillings to his wife and 3 daughters during day-long impeachment proceedings. The Senate was told that although the County Assembly approved road contracts worth 1.4 billion in the 2018-2019 financial year, the county government awarded 2.1 billion shilling worth of tenders. The Dendero MCA Solomon Kinodia is the one who has successfully moved that motion to impeach the governor in the county assembly. He also came and spoke at the Senate yesterday, and he gave what his grounds were when he was moving this in the Senate.
Of course, in terms of evidence that has been presented, evidence that they have, of course, the books, etc., from whether they're using witness accounts and those who are able to say one thing or the other.
Yep.
It would be interesting to see if this decision was then based on evidence as opposed to sentiment for the future. I mean, we've had the discussion previously about, okay, is it a litmus test for Senate to see if your role as oversight actually then comes into play and is well established? Or are we going to look at what we see that could be in terms of favors for you in the future? Don't kick your brother out because at some point you want to be in that position. If something would then happen to you, would not want then the axe to fall on your head.
If you follow what's been happening in the U.S. with regards to the impeachment of their president, they've laid out a timetable of what's to take place, the period of time within it's supposed to take place, and they even told you exactly the details of what is going to happen. They're during this period and this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We expect this to happen. We expect witnesses. We expect the other and the other. And what is also thrown in there is the law regarding it, so that you're reminded what is going to guide those deliberations. Now, unless it was published on a day when I actually missed or I didn't read the papers, these aren't very clear about our cases because we know what Ferdinand Waitito is being accused of, right? But what does the law say about these things in detail? And what are the possible outcomes? Have they been outlined so that when one reads, one understands and says, this is what the law says, this is what they've deliberated, this is the evidence that has been provided.
Yeah.
So when you arrive at the outcome, one at least understands how you arrived at it. Has this happened? And did I miss it when it was happening?
Well, I think
it's in the law.
It's in the law, and basically, okay, if we're talking about then what he's been accused.
No, not in the law. Has it been made? You see, most of us are not aware of what is in the law.
It's in the law, exactly.
Yes, unless somebody tells us.
Which is
and
why I'm
makes it
saying that
clear.
all we've been told so far is that it's not clear. It's not been made clear. I think that's the answer to your question. It's not been made clear as per if this happens according to the law, then what would be the result as per that. What we have been told so far is that, okay, this is what he's been accused of. The charges that have been leveled against him, then in contravention of the Governor's Act, in contravention of the Constitution, etc., etc. What we've been told so far is the process in terms of he's been impeached, then what will happen at the Senate floor, and rather in the Senate court, as it were, and then in this case, should he be convicted, he will cease to be governor. Should he not be, he will resume his.
So there you go. So
positions.
we already know what should happen.
According to what has been reported, we know what will happen. We know
the process,
the
timelines, and everything.
And then we know that at the end of today, we will know, based on what the ruling will be, how it will go through.
Do we know the threshold of witnesses that are required for such a case? Because we've heard of one MCA, yes, but what's the threshold? Because constitutionally, must there be a threshold, or is it just one person providing evidence is adequate?
And the other person coming to respond,
You see-
right? This I think this is where the standing orders of the Senate allows now the senators to look at what's been presented to them and welcome anybody who has information to give, and also looks at who are the main people in this particular case, right?
I agree completely.
I think what we have a problem with, and I can see where you're heading, I think what we have a problem with is that the law gives very strict timelines, and even the senators have complained about this, because when you say that when this matter is presented to the Senate has 10 days to make a determination. 10 days is not enough. Like, that's the reason why we are seeing. So they were sitting yesterday, they had a sitting for the whole day, and then they have to go and make a decision almost immediately. They work overnight to come up with a decision. Even if it's a committee of 11 members that's appointed, you have sittings, you listen, and then you have a timeline within which you must deliver your verdict. So you don't have a lot of time to even call many witnesses or to interrogate this matter further or to say, let's see the documentation. You just rely on what has been brought to you.
Does this period also include the time for investigations, or does it include the time when the issue is actually brought before the Senate? Because a lot,
When it comes to the Senate, 10 days.
when it arrives at the Senate, 10 days. Okay. But it isn't the Senate investigating. Surely they are relying on the investigative organs that the country has. Is that not so?
No. They are the trial court.
I understand that the trial court. But
So what they do is, yes, they may call in. You see, the DPP has a case in court, right? And the DPP will not come and bring that same evidence that he's presenting in court to the Senate. So the Senate is.
But does it prevent the Senate from actually using the same evidence? Because if they get it from the same place that the DPP got it,
They could do that.
okay.
They could do that. They could
So
say,
do they actually have?
Let's see.
an
Do they have
Senate
the time?
No, do they have an investigative arm? That's
They
what I'm
don't.
asking.
No. It's the membership of the Senate.
So essentially, a committee maybe that deals with these things. So the committee then which investigates.
In this particular case, remember when they met last week, they were to do either of two things: either form a committee of 11 members or form a committee of the whole House, and they agreed on the entire House being the committee. So these proceedings are happening before everybody. So all members have an equal right to ask a question. All members have an equal right to participate in these hearings. If you decide that you're going to call in, of course, the first people that you need to call are, this matter has come from the county assembly, so you need to hear from the county assembly. Then you also need to hear from the accused governor. Then you also need to hear from now other quarters. You determine which other quarters you hear from.
It's interesting because I think in all of this, the charges and the defense is that the MCAs actually, they moved to the motion to impeach him against, of course, in contravention of the Government Act's Public Finance Management Act. In his preliminary objections, Waitito accused the MCAs of denying him an opportunity to state his case. He also questioned the procedure from the time the MCAs mooted the impeachment.
Yeah.
So, of course, here he had an issue in terms of, I need to then be able to speak, which, look, whatever the case, yes, he then does have a right, according to procedure, to state his case, and he feels like he was being denied that. Now, of course, begs the question, then is there enough time? Of course, 10 days has been given, today being day 10. As it were.
Not yet, really.
Not
yet.
The decision is going to be made today.
They're going to start now determining whether this happens. Whether now they want to fast track this and they have to give a response. If you technically count between Thursday last week and today, even if we counted the weekend,
Right.
it's not 10
so
days.
We're not at 10 days yet. Well, I think it was interesting the point that CT was bringing up, because if we're not looking at any kind of investigation done deeper than the allegations or the charges that were leveled, and then what people are going to say in terms of the county assembly, it then seems as if any kind of judgment would be made on sentiment as opposed to evidence.
But the Senate has experience on this. This is the sixth governor that is going through this impeachment process. There was Governor Chepkwony of Kericho. There was Martin Ombora twice, Mwangi wa Iria, and Derito Gachagua, former governor of Nyeri, the late. Then just this last year, there was Granton Samboja of Taita Taveta, right? So apart from Martin Ombora, whom the Senate agreed with the county assembly on impeachment,
The courts differed.
then the courts differed. The others have basically had a vote of confidence, rather, from the Senate. So this is a particular case where we're saying, all right, what's this procedure? Is it sufficient to allow to say that we have had, fairness on both sides? Because if the county assembly, members of the county assembly, went through a motion and they thought that they had strong grounds to impeach their governor, then you also ought to give enough time and sufficient time to interrogate what exactly is it that these people are saying. Are there sufficient grounds? Does the governor have a right of reply? Has he presented his case well? Did we have enough time to hear from him? So just saying that in one day we heard from the county assembly, we heard from the governor, we heard from the lawyers, I think it was too cramped.
Yeah, too short a time, because there's a lot in terms
This
of process
length of
that
time,
needs to be done.
in your opinion, how much more time should they have been given?
I don't know. It just seems that I don't know. I can't prescribe and say, okay, give 21 days or 42. But I'm just saying that then with what needs to be presented vis-a-vis the time that has been given, it just seems that so much has not been done.
Remember, this is against a backdrop of complaints we've had against the judiciary, who seem to take forever.
Things taking forever. And especially this particular political process.
Yes.
There's a reason why it was given timelines like this.
Yes, because they understood if you sort of like leaving it open-ended, hey,
You open the market.
yes, Kabza, that case, we'll never hear the end of that case.
Of course.
Yes.
But do you think 10 days really, 10 days to the Senate does not include weekends? So 10 days, we're talking about a fortnight.
10 working days.
Yeah.
So you're talking about actually 14 days.
Talking about a fortnight. That should be sufficient. You can take the first 5 days.
I was actually going to ask the
hearing.
question, why do people assume 10 days is insufficient? I was actually going to ask the same thing, because really, it is the entire Senate looking into this thing, which means even all their committees are involved.
Yeah.
They know the players. They can call these people in. Whatever needs to be done, it isn't as though you need 100 days in order to determine this. There's a case already in existence.
Yeah.
The same place that the DPP got his evidence, they can also go and get the evidence from them. Remember, and we were told by the DPP that there is a collaborative effort that the government makes with its various agencies. You may not necessarily talk to the DPP, but there are other agencies who could give you information. The public, the procurement oversight authority may have information,
Yep.
since a lot of these things are procurement issues. Okay, now EACE may have
come in,
information. Again, there are many arms. The DCI may have information. It may not necessarily infringe on what is going on, but if these are the points on which the governor is being accused, I believe the Senate would have every right to ask for this
For
particular
information to be presented before
Yes,
it.
even because by the time someone is being impeached, these county officials, the assembly, have gone through these processes. Yes, and some of these cases have certainly been taken to the DCI because the DCI and the Anti-Corruption Commission were involved.
I think then it takes us back to where this process starts.
Yes.
At the county assembly. The county assembly is the one that should be doing all this work.
But I think they did it. That's why they're impeaching him.
No, the county assembly has a sitting. Impeachment is presented, it's tabled, MPs debate. So the person who's moving it moves and says, this is what has happened, this, and the other. And then there's no investigation. It's basically just a debate. And those that agree with what has been presented before them vote yes. Those that don't agree vote no.
And then you have an impeachment.
And then you have an impeachment that has taken place.
Lovely process.
And then you have 10 days now to tell the Senate, all right, so this is what the county assembly, the person who moved this at the county assembly was alleging. Give us the evidence. Now let's start investigating. So it becomes now the court is coming here at the Senate.
Yeah, but
I think we should have started earlier.
No. Eric, it mirrors very much what happens. Even if you look at the case that Babu Wino had, you are arrested because there are allegations. They're
Yep.
called allegations.
Yep.
You're given a brief scholarship,
Yep.
all right, while investigations are taking place. Remember, they didn't investigate, then arrest him, incarcerate him, investigate. So this
But the
isn't a...
investigations- No. The investigations in this particular case, when you're taken to court, you're basically being charged immediately. And you're not being charged and said, and we're saying we are charging you as we take the next 16
Eric,
months.
how many cases do we
investigating.
know in this country where the process has been delayed because you're being told they're still investigating further? Huh? How many?
That's when they don't charge you.
People have had such
You don't
issues.
take a plea
No,
Because
the excuse they say
investigation
is that they can't release you because you might interfere with
Because
the
when
investigations.
they ask
With
when they
evidence.
ask that
Yes.
bail, for example, that bail not be granted, it's so that they can stay in, so that they can continue with their investigations.
Yes.
A lot of times we've seen that happen, and because at the point that bail is being asked for, charges have already been leveled.
Yes.
Right? And so they say, okay, charges have been leveled, you take a plea. However, we would like you to stay in so that we can continue and have you not
And I always hold
interfere with
that
the
investigators
process.
are playing a dirty game here, because when you come in and you've preferred charges against somebody,
It's
then
because you had sufficient evidence.
You should
no?
have sufficient evidence to come. So when you're saying that we're still conducting some, or we're doing this and the other, then that's wrong. And that's why the judge says, look, if you're not ready, go away.
Release this person.
Yeah, go away.
You should have been ready in the first place, and we assume that everything that you brought at this point was sufficient enough. And we've heard
You were
those statements
convinced
being
that
made.
you have a case,
This is
and
why
that's why
you
you came
asked.
to me
Exactly.
as
This
a
is why you
judge.
asked in the
But,
first
but
place.
remember, even with the court process, it's not as though the day you go to court, there's mention.
Yes.
Okay, process one. Then you're given a date on which, and that date
Those
is usually-
mentions now is where both sides, the prosecution and the defense, are playing back and forth. So you, as a prosecution, you should avail all your evidence to the defense, so the defense can can mount a defense. Also saying these are the witnesses that you have. Now, mention is because prosecution was not ready. Prosecution has not given us all the information that we required. Prosecution has not told us all the witnesses that they want to line up. Prosecution has not done this or the other. Delays are usually on the prosecution side.
Yes.
Many times.
so that they can investigate further.
Because they're just not doing their job, right? 10 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is the situation. We're discussing Baba Yao's day as the Senate decides on his fate.
Spice FM, Malindi. Spice FM, spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
The
FM.
Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga and Nduoko. We're discussing the top story this morning. Senators to determine Waitito's fate today. Waitito, governor of Kiambu, appeared before the Senate following the impeachment motion that had passed in the county assembly, and now this went procedurally to the Senate. And the governor plus his accuser met at the Senate yesterday, and where the accuser presented his case. Before we went to the break, I was talking about, I think the county assembly, we should increase that, increase the threshold. County assembly, by the time you're discussing a motion of impeachment, you should get more time to investigate the matter brought before you.
Do you feel that? I mean,
Give, for example, give the governor adequate time to present his defense.
his defense, right?
In
Of
this
course,
particular
because you
case,
want
Waitito
such
was not.
right. You want this. I mean, you want such a case to have, gone through every single check, so as not to come in the future and say, well, this could have been muddled because there was not enough time, or I didn't get a chance to present my case. So whatever the case may be, it'll be clear, it'll be transparent to say time was given, you were able to present your case, and we still found one way or the other that we either agreed with you or disagreed with you. So in something like this, in a process like this, you don't want to leave any room for any kind of vagary and to say that, well, this wasn't allowed and maybe the outcome would have been different had it been. So you don't want to leave any kind of stone unturned in a process like this, unfortunately. And if we already have the sentiment coming out of Waitito himself that he was not able to present his case, and it's already moving forward, that's something that's going to mar the process, whichever way you choose to look at it.
But the 10 days are not over. Has he been prevented from actually presenting his case?
No, he did that yesterday, but he's saying
he's-
the assembly, by the time the assembly was passing this motion, I wasn't given an opportunity to be heard.
And at that time,
At
when
that
the
time,
motion
in
was being
Kiambu.
passed in Kiambu, he should have been given an opportunity at that time. You see, now what it does is that it mars the process in that it could be argued later that at the time when it was being brought forward, I should have been given this opportunity and I was not.
Believe me, it will be argued that he was given an opportunity at the Senate.
They've not disagreed, though.
It's the same case.
I think the senators will actually argue with and agree with Waitito this time. They will say that this matter has been brought before us, but the county assembly did not follow proper procedure.
Follow procedure. That's the
Didn't
problem.
give the
now.
man the right to be heard, and that's when you're coming to tell us that you've already impeached him. So we send it back to you and ask you. So how did you impeach?
Did you
this
follow
gentleman?
process? Yeah.
Did you give him the evidence? Did you have sufficient time to hear from him before you voted and agreed with the mover of the motion that he ought to be impeached? Did you hear from him? If you didn't, this is what I'm actually seeing Governor Waitito surviving this particular one. That's my prediction.
From a legal perspective and from what you represent, his chances of survival are very high. But let's hear what the Senate has to say about this.
Yeah, let's see what
Because there may be
politics
other
behind
things
it
that
is.
were discussed in before the Senate that we are not aware of. And some of them may perhaps be more damning than what we've actually heard so far. And remember, many of these cases also depend on the mood of the country at a certain point in time. Remember, these are politicians deciding the fate of another politician.
Which is why I said, is it necessarily going to be based on evidence or process, or is it going to be
yeah.
based on sentiment?
All those.
Exactly. So, I mean, all of those come into play at this point. The mood is red. People are asking questions in terms of how are we going forward. And we cannot ignore the fact that people's alignment or desire to be in a particular place during a particular time, it will not be ignored either.
The way I'm seeing it playing out is two things are going to happen. Yes, there's a political mood of the country. There's a political mood of the divisions within the coalition, the ruling coalition. Just like we saw in the formation of that 11-member committee. It was voted down because of those political divisions. Tanga kieleweke. The general mood of the House was that these committee members, the ones that are representing the majority side, are all from one wing. And this is the Tanga wing. And that's one of the reasons why it was thwarted. So one, we are going to see, of course, the Tanga side coming together. We will see the Kieleweke side coming together. We will see the minority side and seeing how they determine this particular case. Then there are those who will stand with process and procedure and say, look, procedurally, just like we've done in the other previous cases, we've looked at why didn't we approve the impeachment of Governor Chepkwony? Why didn't we approve the impeachment of the late Nderito Gachagua? Why didn't we do the same in the case of Taita Taveta? Some of those reasons were basically procedural. They said the county assembly, how you went through about this process was wrong. In some cases, they even said, well, as a county assembly, the evidence that you produced before us is not sufficient to warrant this particular charge, to hold a charge. And in the case of Wambora ones, they said, yes, we agree with you. The first time they sent it back to the assembly. Second time, it came and they said, all right, now this time, well done, guys. Followed the process. We agree with you. Man goes home. Man went to court.
Court said man should stay.
Man should stay.
Man should stay. Man has stayed.
Man has stayed. It's also a possibility that they could do the same thing here again, the Senate. Send this thing to the court. Kick the ball to the judiciary.
If certain processes were not followed, it's going to go back to the
assembly.
Yes. Yeah, that's the thing. And unfortunately, this is why it's so important with process. You want to get it right. You want to get it right all through so that it doesn't get thrown back at you. Because this is essentially what will happen. And anybody is looking for the slightest thing to be able to throw it out. Because in as much as the fate of one man hangs in the balance, the future of many other people also hangs in the balance by the decisions that you make at this point.
And the choice of the people. They'll look at it from that point. This man was elected universally by the people of Kiambu. And the representatives of the people of Kiambu in this particular case, if they did not follow procedure, then you are going against the choice of the people of Kiambu. You need to think about that again.
But remember, the MCAs are also representatives of the people of Kiambu.
Yep.
And were duly elected by these very people. So in making the decisions they have made, they could also argue that they're also
speaking for the people.
They're speaking for the people.
Exactly.
Against their father.
Which is why we said at the same time that then the decisions then that Senate makes could either be for the people or against the people, if you want to look at it and draw that line in that direction.
Yep.
So if they decide to convict, this is what the people of Kiambu essentially want.
The beauty of all these things is this is how it is our systems get tested. And this is how we get to see our systems actually work.
Yep.
Because it doesn't matter what the Senate decides, it'll be a subject of debate. There will be people who side with Waititu, there will be people who don't like him, there will be people who don't like certain decisions. But this debate is what makes us understand the systems of ours
Absolutely.
better.
Improves
and
it.
better. Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
That's why it's important to discuss them, I think, even as they're taking place.
And that's why it's important to have governors go to the Senate.
And the other way around,
Yes.
senators become governors.
That is actually the primary thing, because senators, remember, it's a double-edged sword for them. On the one hand, you don't want to pass to set precedents that may harm you later,
Yeah.
should you want to seek that office. But on the other hand, you also want to appear to the general public like that you're the sort of
That you're
person
the
they
one
can
who's
rely
doing
on
it right.
Yes.
to do the right thing
Yeah,
by them.
by
It's
them.
7
Yes.
o'clock right here on Spice FM. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Spice FM.
All right, Mombasa Road is, of course, now in full chock-a-block situation. All the way from the Gateway Mall is not moving in any way whatsoever. Started at about 5:30 this morning, so it is one for the patient this morning. Traffic lights on Gong Road have been fixed and are working, so this is a good thing because traffic will not be as terrible as it was on that road before. All right, looking at different parts of the city now. Thika Road is, of course, giving us the kawaida, as we say. Garden City is where it starts today as you try to get through to Pangani and, of course, into the CBD via the Globe Cinema roundabout. That will happen. A typical morning on Jogo Road as well. Not so bad as you try to access coming from the industrial area side or coming from Buruburu area, getting to the CBD. Not so bad this morning either. Let's see what it looks like shortly. But for now, Langata Road, not as bad as it was over the last 2 days. It might pick up as we go along. We shall let you know. Spice FM KE is Twitter and 0719012600. Let us know what you see and we'll be the eyes for everyone else.
The weather with Spice FM.
All right, taking a look into Nyeri today, it's at 16 degrees and we're going to see showers through most of the day. And of course, into Kisumu as well, where we have showers really around the country. It's a typical wet day, 20 degrees in Kisumu, and we have showers intermittently through the day, of course, until about 9 p.m. tonight. Take a look at Malindi weather. It's quite sunny and sunny right now, likely to be cloudy later with possibility of showers later on. Of course, Nairobi, we have sparse showers around the city at 20 degrees right now, likely to change later, but it's going to be a showery Wednesday. We'll take a look also at Eldoret, where it's quite chilly at 14 degrees now, taking us through to some showers from around 11 o'clock until about 7 p.m. tonight. That's what it looks like around the cities of Kenya today with your weather.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
You know, we hadn't noticed this, right?
If you discuss it on air, I'll impeach you.
Okay. I've taken the
I'm
threat.
having a moment.
Ndu, have you?
No, I will not be threatened in any way, shape, or
You
form.
will
I will
do
stand
this.
my ground.
This
I am a
isn't-
truth seeker.
This is not a threat, it's a promise.
A truth seeker. Hey. All right, City.
All right, Eric.
So today is some anniversary of some sort. The 29th day of January 2020 marks 4 years since something happened 4 years ago. On the 28th of January 2016, the president gave a certain order. This is President Uhuru Kenyatta. He gave a certain order, and he said that some proposals that had been published by the government, especially the Attorney General's office, these are called the Religious Societies Rules 2015, were to be shelved after some serious public outcry from religious leaders. Now, this is what happened. So the government had published some regulations seeking to regulate the religious organizations in the country. These were draft rules. They are seeking to streamline laws on registration and regulation of all religious organizations. This is Christian, Muslim, Hindu, etc., etc. The cleric's certificate of theological training was among the things that was required. For example, they were also saying that religious organizations shall provide a constitution showing a statement of their doctrine of faith. They also said that religious organizations should have statements of accounts and have audited accounts, and the registrar of societies can walk into any religious organization at any time and demand to see records of that particular religious organization. Every religious organization should belong to an umbrella body that has at least a certain number of members. Also, keep an updated register of your members. Hue and cry came from all sectors. The Catholic bishops complained. The National Council of Churches of Kenya complained. The evangelicals complained. The Council of Imams also complained. And the president, who was heading to an election in 2017, looked at it and saw this is going to raise some serious political storm. And of course, made a prudent decision and said, all right, you religious leaders, let's withdraw these things. So you're saying is you're not consulted, you're not involved. We withdraw these things and we ask you to take the lead in coming up with regulations, self-regulation, because you understand why we were starting to do this. There has been a lot of complaint from the public on how religious organizations are behaving in the country. We have issues of radicalization happening in mosques. We have issues of allegations that some of these religious organizations are being used to channel money to terrorist groups. We have issues of religious organizations being accused of conning their congregants. This was around the same time we had the issue of the Panda Mbegu saga and the 310, right? So the government was acting out of public outcry. Religious organizations since then have not taken any lead in bringing this matter back to the public domain for discussion or coming up with their own self-regulation mechanisms that have been published 4 years down the road. And this morning I am saying, due to the failure by the religious organizations to take the lead on this, the government should retable the same regulations that it had tabled in 2015. Religious Society Rules 2015. You have been given time. You have not taken the time. So, really, it appears that you are not willing to do this. So we need to act.
Eric, maybe it isn't that they're not willing. It isn't a priority. If you look at what's happened around the country, what seems to be the priority of many of our churches is to squabble among themselves. It's either they squabble or the other squabble. So it was like a breath of very fresh air the other day when you had the installation of the Bishop of the AIC Church. If there were wrangles, they were behind the scenes and we didn't get to hear of them. But it seemed to have been a peaceful transition. Now, one wishes one would hear more of that or the reporting of that. But against this backdrop, this is something that one has to say about religious leaders and at the same time, band them together with the politicians. They're all human beings. This is the thing that I think
they're all human.
They're all human beings. And sometimes we set standards as though we expect them to be ecclesiastical creatures, and yet they're only human. So they are likely to fall short of certain expectations. But having said this, we still hold them to a higher standard. And we expect those standards to be met.
To be met, of course. And I think they hold themselves also to a higher standard. They themselves have put themselves on this, it be a moral pedestal or whether
Have
it be
they
a
really put
leadership.
themselves there?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely, yes. I mean, even
They expect us to treat them in a certain way, right?
There's
There are things
the
that we
level
should
of
not say in
respect.
their presence.
There's a level of respect they expect
Like what,
from us to
Eric?
accord to them. I mean, Do you want the list, CT?
Well, just 3 items would do. Just 3.
I'll treat you,
there's a
I'll
level
treat
of
you like a
respect
pastor today, so I'll not say this. those things
in your presence.
in
No.
your presence.
There's a
But
level of
is it
respect
that they
expect us.
expect us to treat them in a certain way, or is this a carryover from our traditions and the way we feel we need to treat certain people in places of authority?
It is.
Of
It's
course,
both a
it's
societal thing.
both. It's both. There's a way we expect, we feel that we should treat certain people, whether they're in the church, or any kind of religious organization,
Yeah.
or whether they're in governance. So traditionally, we've treated them that way. And I think they also have the same expectation based on tradition as well, that this is how they used to treat people at that time. I also expect that because I am now in this position,
I'm going to
they
be
should also
treated.
treat me the same way.
But herein lies the conundrum. The way in which certain people in places of authority or high regard were treated was also married to the way in which they served the community.
Yes.
It was a give and take relationship.
Exactly.
The way people responded to those who were considered elders was also married to the way in which the elders conducted themselves and the benefit that the society deemed that they received from these elders. But why this debate goes on and why there's a problem is because oftentimes there are people demanding this respect and they're giving nothing in return. That's where the problem arises. Or it is felt that what they're giving isn't an adequate quid pro quo.
Indeed.
Yes.
A research recently by TIFA Research, right, and we even discussed it here, it showed that there is reducing confidence of the population on the religious organizations. And these are some of the reasons that you see people are asking for better transparency from religious organizations. People feel that the reason why we are feeling like, these guys are not as good is because of how they behave.
Actually, they're being considered to be like everybody else, and in reality, they are not supposed to be. You cannot, you see, it isn't a good day when you are busy, or I am busy comparing a man of the cloth with your regular day-to-day politician.
Yes.
It is not a good thing. It's actually, it's not even a compliment. Because we attribute some of the worst societal traits to our politicians. Now, if we associate our church leaders with these,
With the same.
then we are truly lost.
We are losing it.
Yes.
Let me just give you some of what those rules wanted to have. Clerics to submit certificate of good conduct and their theological training certificates from accredited theological institution.
Number 1.
Number 2, all religious organizations to submit their constitution showing statement of their doctrine of faith. The rules affect imams, pastors, rabbis, and other religious leaders. Any religious society in Kenya must have its constitution with programs, ministries, charitable activities, and education activities undertaken by the religious society and details of persons coordinating these activities. It's basically saying, open up your books, people. Come on, what are you doing? You have a charity, some charity stuff that you're doing?
Tell us about
Tell
it.
us about it. Do you have some education stuff that you're supporting?
Tell us about it.
Do you have any business on the side you're running? You're running a church, you're running a hospital, a school? We need to know about it. All religious societies headquartered within or outside Kenya must be registered and open to the registrar's inspection anytime. All religious leaders must make a declaration of familial relations with other religious leaders and officers. In this case, officers include secretary, treasurer, trustees, and committee members. Any individual church be a member of an umbrella body, and each body must have 2,500 churches registered as an umbrella religious society. Basically, we are just doing this like the matatus. All of you form a circle. So all religious organizations, you must belong to an umbrella that has at least 2,500 individual churches or mosques.
So my cousins and I, who just number 20, cannot actually form such an organization.
You can, as long as you form within an umbrella that
So
has
we have to look for-
You have to
2,500.
look
People
for
who have
those
the-
other ones
who have
now,
those
and then you
numbers.
can now.
Affiliate yourselves with a bigger umbrella.
Like now, I have to go to my entire clan. Tricky.
But remember, it's not about individuals. So you can basically affiliate yourself. So you can say we are, part of the Methodists.
Yes, hold it.
We are part of.
Is it possible for me to say that we are part of some political party's religious wing?
It's not a registered umbrella religious society.
Wing.
It must be a registered umbrella religious society.
So what are we saying essentially? That all of it, just look at what we've seen mushrooming. Just take the last year, drive through Nairobi, take look through different areas, and you'll see that there's a church that has mushroomed here, another one here, another one there, all over the place. Essentially, what we are saying, according to these laws and regulations that are in place right now, all of these are illegal. All of them should not be in operation.
Yes, if the rules came into effect.
The rules came
what they
into
expected
effect.
to do, it's just like the matatus. If you actually came up with a matatu today, it must join a SACCO.
Right.
And that is making sure that there's that accountability. So you all belong to this particular SACCO. We have one management. If we can go to the top of that, head of that management, and say, one of your matatus plying this route misbehaved. You deal with it. Right? Same thing. So you open up a church, you belong to an umbrella religious organization. We've seen them trying,
It provides a check and balance. Remember, some of the more established churches actually do have that umbrella body. The NCCK is one such, National Christian Council of Kenya, right? Now we know how political that has been, don't we?
Of course.
I think it's clear that there's an element of accountability that a lot of these organizations do not want to adhere to, because it seems, look at the SACCOs, for example, with the matatus, they seem to be able to organize themselves really well and are able to either come together on issues or at least sort themselves out. I've heard of stories you want to join, and there's actually quite a system within which they're able to operate and to whom they can now present. Now churches, of course, we must understand that it just seems that one of the overriding factors is money. And people don't want to be accountable in terms of how this money is spent, the purposes for which it has been applied. And we've seen that a lot of the conflict that we even see within church rests squarely on money issues.
Are you comparing?
So here, now that you mentioned that,
our reverend church organizations, are you comparing them
to the madness that is the matatu industry?
Matatu SACCOs, is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
That is what I'm doing.
Here is one of the
this is what we
proposals
have
in that
seen.
regulation.
It has been very clear.
A requirement to give annual returns and audited accounts after general meetings.
Even that. Can you imagine? This is it. What did you call? Sacred, sacrosanct. This is the same thing. Here. Accountability is a problem in the church.
How much money have you collected?
The fights that we have seen. Take the three. NCCK.
No, excuse me.
Normally you like three, right?
Yes, wait.
You know, like three in terms of when we're trying to be nominal. And you like three. We pick three. NCCK. We had the
Episcopalian Assembly, something.
That one.
And
then we had the Catholic bishops problem. We had the SDA problem the other time. What was the main problem? The main issue that we were dealing with.
The underlying issue is control of the cash.
Control of the purse.
It was the human beings. The money wasn't a problem. The money didn't have a problem.
The money is okay.
No, the
money is safe.
The money is inanimate. It doesn't actually decide. It doesn't even have a thought process. It doesn't even have a position on economic issues.
Yeah.
It's the human beings who manage it who have a problem. And yes, again, it's interesting because I want to talk about wealth declaration later, and there's so much similarity in this because you look at the church leaders, and it's like once somebody's leadership, they don't want to be questioned.
Of course not.
They don't want to be held accountable. Essentially, that's what it is.
This church belongs to me.
Essentially, yes.
Especially if you're the leader ordained by God, right?
Yes.
At some point,
No.
this is
It is not. Church leadership is a calling.
Called by the Lord himself.
By
Yes,
God.
yes.
Now, if God has bestowed,
not your people, not like a
your
politician.
people.
No.
So
This
it is bestowed on you by God. So how
plenipotentiary,
dare these
yes.
individuals? How dare these humans then come and ask you
Excuse
about
me.
how you're running things?
Not human, lesser beings.
Lesser human.
Matuta.
Talk to you, a direct servant, anointed, appointed.
Yeah.
By God.
Yes, the Almighty Himself.
Akin to coming down from Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments. This is what is happening in our day and time.
Yeah, but this is a carryover if you look at it, from the very, very early days of the church, when the church and the state were more or less one thing. And what is of interest is that princes of the church, as they were then called, also relatives of the king. So it was a nice family affair.
Yes, it was a family affair. We are discussing regulation of religious organizations. 4 years ago, on this particular day, the president directed the Attorney General to shelve proposed rules that were sent to regulate religious organizations after hue and cry from religious leaders. Religious leaders were asked to go back and spearhead a process of internal self-rule, right? So, of your own regulations. 4 years down the road, we haven't seen that coming out of religious organizations. And I'm saying this morning that it's about time we revisited the 2015 proposed rules and bring them to the fore. 20 minutes past 7. Good morning.
Spice FM, Malindi.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.
This is one time in 2016, January 2016, when all religious organizations definitely just spoke with one voice, all right? And they were speaking truth to power, if you may want to call it that way. We are shocked that the government even is conceiving something like this. So a statement by the Catholic bishops issued around that time, January 13th, 2016, was that with shock and surprise that they have received the news that the government has formulated new rules that, if implemented, will have direct and negative impact on our evangelization mission. Similar attempts to regulate the procedures for Christian marriage have led to a major drop in young people coming to church to celebrate the sacrament. We, the shepherds of the Catholic Church, are deeply concerned about the proposed new laws, the religious society's rules, on the following grounds. One, these are their objections. The Constitution draws a very clear line between the state and religion. The same Constitution also explicitly clear on the freedom of worship, which is enshrined in the document. How then does the government purport to regulate how Kenyans worship? Is this not a clear violation of the Constitution? One. Number two, broad sections of the law are unrealistic and utopian. For example, part of the law requires different faiths to keep an updated register of all their members. We wish to remind the state that the work of winning souls for Christ is an ongoing task, one that happens every second, every minute, every day, every night. Every second, millions of souls are won for Christ. To demand that all faiths keep record of people won for Christ every minute and those who have become inactive is therefore logistically unrealistic and untenable.
Is that what was being requested? A record of all souls that have been won?
Well, it's an updated one. Now they've gone and said that updating means updating by the second.
Oh, come on.
Right?
Yes.
You know, every year, just like we do returns. If you run a company, every year you have to do your returns with the registrar of companies and say these are the directors of this company, these are the shareholders of the company. Every year you have to file that. I think it's the same thing that these rules ought to do. At the end of every year, so have your own register. These are our members. This is how much. Are our books of accounts. Not saying that updated by the second. So this is what the Catholic bishops are saying, expecting that now when I come and talk to C.T. Muga and he says, "Oh yes, I love the Lord, I shall add that on the list and take that to the government," is unrealistic.
It's very realistic.
How?
It's very, very realistic.
Each and every one
because
of you.
Part of the reason why those numbers are kept even within the church is for planning purposes, because your membership gives you a clear estimate of what it is you can expect in terms of gifts and tithes, etc., etc.
Right.
And
It's the
programs that you need to run.
Yes, it's
in
the
the
same
community.
numbers that the government is seeking. They're not asking you to give them something you
Different.
shouldn't already have.
Because they do it anyway.
They already have.
This is why they plan it.
Today,
this
if
is
you
why
went,
they
if
do.
you went to any church and said you'd like the church to do something for you, let's say
They're going to check your membership.
They'll check your membership.
Yes.
You want to wed in this church? Do you belong?
Ebu die and you never used to go to that church and see what they're going to do with
they
you.
will not conduct your
Or
funeral
not
ceremony.
do with you in this case.
Yes. Number 3 of their objections. Further to that, the new rules give the registrar sweeping powers, including the power to invade churches to conduct impromptu audit. This, to say the least, is a license for the government to violate constitutionally guaranteed freedom of worship. The Catholic Church is not a business, neither is it an NGO or a civil society. The Catholic Church is a people of God. As such, the state cannot purport to audit the faith of the people of God.
Goodness gracious me. That is a full admission that the church has gone headlong into politics. That's a political statement.
It is, right?
It is a political statement.
So this is actually reacting to that
Yes.
rule says that At any particular point, the registered societies can come in and say, all right, guys,
Are
give us
they
a
aware
register.
that the government can decide to register you?
Because
That church is registered in this country.
Yes.
Right.
You can be
you
deregistered.
can be deregistered.
Yes.
And at this point, and I don't think they also have realized, this body, if we're going to call it, the congregation of churches have realized that, the government could actually take it quite seriously. Sure, we've had 4 years where nothing has happened. You said that, no, we cannot allow you to regulate us. Okay, fine. It has been put back into your hands.
Yeah, go and come up with your own
come
ways
up with your
in
own
which you
ways.
think-
Bring it to
And
us.
now you haven't.
Now you have not. Here presents a unique opportunity for the government to say, okay, we gave you an opportunity to do so. And with what we have been seeing over time, because 2 weeks ago we talked about the church being in crisis in terms of what people believe, in terms of people don't want to go to church anymore, people don't feel that they should. Juxtapose that against now how they've told you now to regulate yourself. Look at what the majority of Kenyans are saying. Now you don't want to do it, we will then do it for you.
Right.
The government is a secular structure, and all these institutions actually exist within that structure. And there are rules by which we manage our lives within that structure. That freedom that we speak of is within that structure. It's not outside,
Outside of
that,
it.
that particular structure. This is now giving to Caesar what is Caesar's.
This is it.
Caesar is this particular government. So when you make such a statement, essentially, you know what you're saying? That you are above that government.
Yep.
That,
This is it.
That you have your own government and your own rules, and you are not going to.
For me, it's not even looking at it as government per se. It's looking at it as the people of Kenya. The government is a representation of the people. If
It
the people
is.
feel,
It
if
is.
the people feel that these rules are draconian, they're going to shoot them down anyway, right?
They will.
If the people accept and say these rules were of course going to end up in parliament, they have to go through
And
parliament.
that parliament have people who subscribe to that particular faith.
Yes.
And there are people who would have also voiced their opinion. What I'm reacting to is the blatant disregard for the cohesion and for the collusion that is required with all these entities within a country. Because you make a statement like that and then you give it a hallowed appearance as though that this, goodness gracious me, you're actually challenging the government directly on something that is actually their mandate.
No, you said one was a very political statement. Listen to this other one. This was, I'm reading a statement issued in 2016 by the Catholic bishops in reaction, of course, to the proposed rules that was seeking to regulate churches and religious organizations. To demand that all faiths register followers will only serve to convert churches into mere registration centers instead of citadels of hope and faith for millions of Kenyans. Matters of faith are not about numbers. They're about conversion of the soul.
Unfortunately,
To
we
demand
have-
that churches of this keep a record of their followers will effectively reduce Christianity into a game of numbers and water down the mission of the church, which is evangelization and assisting the people to become better persons.
But this is the thing. They keep records of these numbers anyway. They already keep the records. And we know for a fact, we know that once you come there, in as much as there's feeding your soul, there's nutrition for, whatever it is,
Yeah.
soul nutrition, right? At the end of the day, you still are you're a number because they use it for planning purposes. And we know this. If they were not look, how many churches do you see?
Was this a
And we
fear?
just talk
Was this a
about churches
fear?
or just religious organizations. In the bulletins that they give you week on week, you know how many people, in terms of what they collected in terms of money. How come they're interested in that statistic and not these others? They're aware of the people. During a church service, you sit and there are people who go around counting. Why do they do that? If they're not interested in
to
the
know
number.
how many people came.
So they plan for these numbers anyway.
Yes.
They plan for them. So this is the problem. Why can't you now just take that information, which you already have anyway, and pass it forward? This is the thing. Why
Yep.
not just pass it forward? Nobody's asking you to do
what I
something
see
totally
is the
different.
politics actually coming into this.
Absolutely.
When these
Absolutely.
numbers start becoming public, then it starts exposing some certain church organizations, right? So over time, we'll start saying, all right, so X number of people were going to Catholic churches in 2016, and this number has reduced by 100,000 by 2020. Is this showing that the Catholic Church is losing its traction and influence on the ground? So this will become another political thing. It could also be used that way. I started a church last year, and as you can see with all the records that are there in the government, I have this number of members. I now have control of 5 million members under my umbrella organization. People like Bishop Mark Kariuki, who is the head of an umbrella organization of churches, can say these are the numbers under my umbrella organization, right? It could also be used politically, and it could be used politically in a negative manner. When you are the one who's losing numbers.
Everything about registration, for you to even be accepted to be registered as an organization, numbers come in. At every the operationalization of the activities of that organization, numbers come in. Numbers are always there. The strength of a church or a party, numbers come in. Now, when you find a statement of the nature that you have read coming out and is supposed to represent the thinking of a group of religious leaders, you get the impression that the drafters and those who presented it are not in touch with what's happening. They're completely out of touch. But it represents something far more sinister. It represents a group of people who seem to feel that they cannot be regulated.
Yeah.
Or shouldn't be
They
regulated.
shouldn't be regulated.
Because what they're doing is of a heavenly nature. Now, we look at ads that we've seen just recently, a week ago, an ad where a church is actually advertising, talking about 8,000 people walking through their doors every week. So they know these numbers, and they're at pains to count those numbers. So they know the numbers that are there anyway.
They don't want to be
just don't
accountable
want
for
to
those.
give them over.
Yeah. They don't want anybody else to use those numbers.
Exactly.
Or to be accountable for those
Exactly.
numbers. It's 7:30. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads and then continue the conversation. We'll open up the phone lines as well. 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. Should we or should we not regulate religious organizations? Good morning.
.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, in Gong Road outbound, we have some traffic heading into the city centre. Inbound, of course, not so bad this morning. It's flow and going actually quite smoothly as opposed to what we saw 2 days ago. Mombasa Road outbound from Lolongo at a complete standstill at Gateway Total, and it is utter gridlock. Of course, police that are manning the junction at the North Airport Mombasa Road interchange. Traffic is not flowing from where they are positioned this morning. We don't understand why, but hopefully we'll try to find out in a while what is going on. Kangunda Road is not moving. It's chock-a-blocked. Interestingly, the police are also in traffic. They're not moving either. Questions coming up. What's happening on Thika Road? Thika Road is moving today. Not so bad as what we've seen in the past couple of days. It's not so bad. Langata Road, of course, we've got traffic there as well. Spilling over from Rongai, and that now all culminates at the Bomas Junction. Hopefully it will go past traffic hour in a short while, and we'll let you know what it looks like in a while. You can use the southern bypass. It might be a longer route, but you'll get there faster. Spice FM KE is where we are on Twitter. Give us a call, 0719 012 600.
96.1 Spice FM, Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Unright. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So a couple of years ago, following complaints, general complaints from the public on people who are supposed to be shepherds of the flock, basically just going rogue and abusing those duties and responsibilities and conning people in the name of religion. And also because of complaints that there has been a lot of radicalization happening in the mosque. We saw those cases in Mombasa, for example. Remember one particular mosque, Masjid Musa, where it had been alleged that there was a lot of radicalization happening in there. Youths had at one point even had running battles with police. They had held a flag of the Al-Shabaab and hoisted it within the mosque grounds. We have seen allegations that some of these organizations are also being used to funnel funds to terrorist organizations and terrorist groups. And then the whole question comes in. When you start questioning how religious organizations are operating, you're interfering with how people worship, people's individual rights of worship, which are guaranteed in the Constitution. But the government came up with rules. They were called the Religious Society Rules 2015, which sought to sort of streamline how these organizations are operating. Here one cry came back from the religious organizations. The president directed the withdrawal of those rules and told the religious organizations, all right, you go and work together, take the lead on this, come up with how you want to self-regulate as, religious sector. 4 years down the road, we haven't heard anything. Now, the question is, should we or should we not regulate religious organizations? 0719 012 600. You can call in.
I don't think the question is whether we should. They're already regulated, but how much? If I asked you to register, I'm regulating.
That's a regulation already.
Yes. If I am saying that there are certain things you must provide before I register you, I am regulating you.
Mm-hmm.
If we're having a debate about whether you should pay taxes or not, I am regulating you. I'm calling you to account, and there is nothing wrong with that. And the reason why there's nothing wrong with that is because churches are led by human beings. And sometimes the oddities that we represent as human beings manifest itself in our leadership and in the places where we conduct this leadership. And the churches are not exempt. That's why we've had cults. Because that's an individual whose mind has taken a certain southern leaning. Or is it eastern? Leaning.
Always face east.
East, yes. and as a result, certain things have happened that one wishes and prays had not happened. Or one prays that had there been more regulation, certain things would not have happened. Freedom, so long as it doesn't negate or interfere adversely with the freedoms of others, is a good freedom. But the problem with some of these things is when you then come out with an open statement which represents an entire group of people, and it is framed in that way. One, it's combative. Two, it's adversarial. I'm using two words which you may think are synonymous, but in this case I'm using them for a simple reason. The approach or the response was as though, why is it that you who are clearly showing that you're not my friend, that's the adversarial aspect of it.
Yeah.
Instead of perhaps asking the question and saying, there are reasons why you want to do this. Perhaps before we go into this dialogue of what we want to do or not, can you furnish us with greater detail as to why you feel...
Why are you seeking to do
yes, yes, we may even know why they're seeking, but let them put it out there and explain. And then of our response and say, look, we as this particular church, the things you speak of, we don't see them in our congregation.
Yeah.
We may have issues and this and this and this and this.
But they're not here.
But they're not here.
But we acknowledge
Yes.
that they exist.
Yes, and we also acknowledge the role that you play in providing us with security, in doing this and the other. That's how such letters are written. It's combative in that it's in your face and it's a direct challenge to something the government was proposing. They had not implemented it. Proposed.
Yep.
And that was the response. So it begs the question, why such a strong response? Is it because history has shown that the government sometimes can do some crazy things, again because of the human element in it? Or is it because you have something to hide?
Of course. And
could
this
be
is the
both.
thing. It could be both.
Either or both, right?
It could be both. And unfortunately,
The
again, we
former
always
is
say that
not
exactly that there could be that there is something that is being hidden in terms of how then you, especially then how then you use the money that is gotten from these numbers of people from whom it is demanded week on end. It is demanded. Tithes and offerings is no longer an offering because an offering is voluntary, right?
Comes from
but
the heart.
Exactly. But nowadays it has taken on a different meaning.
Which church do you go to, my sister?
Look,
Because no,
across board, look, people have talked about the fact that
No,
they're
because
being,
this one.
people have talked about the
higher-
fact time on end that they are being
What?
abused.
It's
and
an expectation.
Yeah, it's an expectation.
As soon as
now
you
that
walk
you
through
come to
those
church
doors.
and bring your offering.
You know, it's still early morning. So
You're
let me
trying
ask,
to do your psychological thing on me.
let me ask
today,
a
but I
let me ask you
refuse.
a more pertinent question. Are you confusing the investment group with your church?
Omo, now, investment group and church seem to be the same thing. Only in this case, you're not benefiting from the investment.
You meet once on
no.
Sunday morning and Sunday
benefit.
afternoon.
Okay, they give you something that you take for your
no,
soul.
No, you benefit. You benefit.
Yeah, being a
it's,
member
it's
of
the
the-
one
of the
time in the
society
week
and
for that
organization.
hour and a half or 2 hours where you don't have to answer your phone.
They're giving you, they nourish your soul, they give you hope and,
And
prospects
if you're
for
really
the new.
tired, you can actually fall asleep
You
and
can
no one
take a
will
nap.
bother you.
Even the children know you
Yes.
don't make noise in church.
Exactly.
So they'll give you peace.
Look,
They'll give
at
you
the end
peace.
of the day, the latter is what seems to be the case because
Yeah.
it seems as if there's something that organizations are
something.
trying to hide. And then, of course, it doesn't make it any easier that we see the leaders of these particular organizations, in some cases, of course, not all, because we can't make it a blanket statement. But in a lot of cases, we see that the leaders then of these organizations live extremely lavish lifestyles. And then you have to ask the question, where is this coming from? So it seems that there is where they don't want to be regulated.
And those from organizations that have some set basic rules of operation don't make noise about the others that are living like that.
Exactly.
Here's the problem.
There's a protection of the brotherhood.
There's a protection of and if in telling them go and come up with your own regulations, it's basically saying be each other's brother's keeper.
Yes.
Right? And ensure that people who are living a lavish life, you call them out, you bring them back in line. If people are getting wayward, you call them out and tell them this is the way the Lord taught us to shepherd our flock.
You know, where the human element once again rears its ugly head is often in these matters. In that, when secularism becomes the norm in church, the so-called spiritual or religious aspects of the church go out of the window in any crevice that they might creep out of. Because then you can't differentiate between being in church and being elsewhere. Simply because the norms and the values that are being put across sound to you very similar. You have a point in that there are religious institutions that more or less insist that people should give a certain amount of money. But there are very many others who actually just ask people to give as they can. They say, this is the thing that we have, this is the budget that we have, give as you are able. Bus, or as you are enabled. And they leave it at that. Now, these other fellows who come in and more or less demand.
They look at the color of the note.
Yes, I think these are people who are not just businessmen. These are people who are usurpers of the truth. They are people who are out to benefit themselves in the name of religion.
Yes. Yeah.
They are not even what they claim to be, because by manifestation and by their deeds, it is clear that what they claim to be, they are clearly not. Yes. The whole purpose of this religious setup is to ensure that, you see, what is considered spiritual nourishment should manifest itself in someone's life. As in, the life ought to be better. Wonderful things ought to happen to you. And the goodwill that you receive ought to be passed on. But when you hear someone who claims to be a man of the cloth standing out in public and insulting people, you have to pause and ask,
What's going on here?
What does this guy actually represent? Because it's a complete antithesis of what he's saying he represents. Now, such a person is what lends credence to the need for there to be regulation.
Some regulations.
Yes.
I'm reading a statement from the Catholic bishops because, of course, you know that the Catholic Church is one of the largest religious organizations in the country.
If not the
they
largest.
represent many people. They have some serious order on how things in the Catholic Church are done. But they were not the only people who came up with statements.
No.
The evangelicals also issued a statement. The other faiths also issued a statement condemning the government's attempt at instituting these religious societies rules 2015. And this is what they were saying. So the Catholic bishop said, while we acknowledge the government's concerns about reported cases where persons purporting to be shepherds of the flock have grossly abused duties and responsibilities placed on them, it is our opinion that these new rules will not adequately address such cases. So they already agree that yes, we have an issue, but they're saying whatever you've come up with is not enough. Now, this was being brought to them so that they can have bring their input. This is what they should be saying. All right, this is not enough. Add this so that we ensure that it's enough to cover
Everybody.
everybody, and the concerns that have been raised by the public. That's not what they did. They said remove everything.
Take it all out.
Take it all out. This is going against the Constitution, which guarantees freedom of worship. This is against the Constitution, which says there shall be a separation between church and state. This is a secular country.
That debate that we have, the separation of church and state. So what are their functions? The functions are clearly separate. But at some level, they're joined at the hip. You cannot function outside the secular state.
You can't. That's
Yes.
why it comes. It starts from there.
Yes, exactly. But the secular state understands that you, as a different entity, have to live and abide by rules that suit the purposes that you claim to represent. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not a difficult understanding. But again, I'm bringing the issue, the human element. Why I keep bringing the human element is because this is what often manifests itself as a representative of what a larger group of people want. And yet, it may actually be a few individuals who have that particular idea.
And just seem to be able to clamor for it the loudest in this case. And that's what you hear, and then translate it to mean that because you hear it louder coming from certain quarters, that it is then representative of the total view, the total population, which in many cases is not the case.
I mean, it's like when we speak ill of MPs. In all honesty, it isn't all of them.
No, it is.
Many
But
are good.
unfortunately, they are well represented.
The bad apples are very loud.
Yeah,
And
they are
very
loud and they represent others who are silent and actually do what they said they would do. They performed the functions for the oath that they swore. Yes, but they're not loud enough.
Take a short break at 7:45. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We have Eric Latif, CT Muga, Nduo Call. The phone lines are 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. Also post your comments on Facebook, Spice FM KE, at Spice FM KE on Twitter. You can tag us at Eric Latif, at Nduo Call, at CT Muga. Should we not regulate religious organizations? Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
0719 012 600 is where you can post your comment. You can call in and chime in this conversation. Should we or should we not be regulating religious organizations? Of course, we've seen what the religious organizations are saying. Let's take their side of the argument for a bit, all right? And say, so they're saying that if you start coming in so close and so strongly on matters of faith, this, as history has taught us, is one way of the state coming to interfere with where people go and seek refuge.
Muzzling.
It's muzzling their freedoms, right? And it's people have been known to go and seek refuge from in churches and in religious organizations in faith. When the state starts coming in, it's an encroachment.
It is.
It's an attack.
Attack is strong. Encroachment, yes. But remember, if the services that you claim to provide are not being provided, and instead of being a protective outfit, you are a fleecing outfit, then the government has every right to intervene. Because everything you claim is what the government will claim, that they're actually protecting the citizenry.
Same thing for them. Yeah.
Can the government use that as a way to enter? And then we don't
actually, if you're talking
where
about
shall it stop?
The argument is actually very, very valid, and governments have been known to use all manner of excuses to just essentially get what they want done. And what they say often has very little bearing on what they actually want to get done. What they say is the PR part of the entire enterprise. But the truth of the matter, again, is this. The church itself shows itself to be intolerant to views that they don't particularly support. Because there's nothing in what the government suggested that, in my opinion, was beyond discussion, unless we are being told that they had tried to have a discussion with the government and the government wasn't moving. They said, okay, let's go ballistic on them.
Yep.
Yes.
But in this case, it was the total opposite.
It was the opposite.
Said, we're
the
not
government
even, we're
published
not even
this
going
and
to
said
set
we'd
the
like
rules for
public
you.
participation by
Right.
religious organizations.
And they said, we're not even going to set the rules for you. You go and say, what do you think? Tell us how you want to be reimagine that. A government giving you
2016,
the opportunity.
2017,
Then you
2018,
sit on it
2019,
for 5 years.
2020.
Right? 5 years. No movement, no whisper from a church
Although
rat,
there's
as it were.
No, there's movement.
They just continue doing whatever they're doing.
There's movement.
But the church mouse in this case is silent. It's not doing anything
Actually,
in terms of these regulations.
If the church has grown because, one, the poverty levels in this country has also increased. And that is where people go for refuge. All these splinter churches and all these little groups of churches that keep mushrooming. Why do you think they mushroom? Because somehow there's a product that people seem to need.
Yes.
And when they seem to offer it, they will go there.
They go there. But the thing is also comes along with a lot of people, the very little that they have left. They're planting this seed of hope with the little that they have left. And that is where the problem lies. That is where now you need to be sure of where we are going, because you say, okay, the place where people should find refuge is the place where they're actually being fleeced. Because you go and you say, okay, I have no hope, I have no job, I have no this, but I have my 200 shillings. And then they're coming to tell you, you come here and we can give you some hope. However, follow that belief that you have and plant a seed.
The counter argument for that is that faith is not something that you think about rationally. Don't put any rationalization on faith.
Then why ask me to put money behind it?
If people have chosen to go and participate in this, if people have chosen to go and say, well, I've been asked to give all that I have and I gave all that I have because of my faith. If people have chosen to decide, I want to give my house to the pastor and then I can go and live on the streets.
With the faith that something will happen.
That something will happen. That is a matter of faith, right? Don't come in and interfere with people's faith. If people wanted something different, they would not go to those churches. When people feel that, these church leaders and church organizations are not living up to our standards or our liking, they will stop going there. So don't regulate. That's why they're saying, don't regulate faith.
Let us just do as we want, with want and abandon. Let us basically do what we want.
Let human beings
understanding that we have this ordination from heaven, as it were. So basically what you're saying, within a country, within the borders of a nation, you then want to do as you like.
Yes, when it comes to faith. Anything else, we agree we shall get into this secular state and secular structure. Everything else, secular structure. When it comes to faith, don't rationalize it.
Actually,
don't ask me.
Actually, faith is logical.
How is it that you go there to claim a miracle and you don't get
Eric,
one?
Faith is logical. I know it sounds like it isn't, but it actually is, because faith cannot exist unless, it can't exist out of the realm of there being an object to which the faith is directed, or a person to whom the faith is directed. You see, for instance, when someone gives the 200 shillings as a gift offering or as a seed, why it differs from the lottery is this. The lottery is vague. It's chance. You never know.
You could win.
Yeah, but this one is presented as you will win.
You will.
You must win. Simply because it is promised that given it shall be given. You see, that's the logic behind it.
Yes.
So now you apply this mechanism that you have to this. But the way it is presented, you might as well go to the lottery, really.
At this point, the way it is presented, you might as well.
You might as well. It's bahati nasibu, as we say.
Of course, it is, and that's where your faith comes in. You give, and then you pray, and you hope that this will happen.
Precisely.
Let's take this phone call from our friend Zachary in Nakuru. Good morning, Zachary.
Oh, hi, guys.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, Zachary.
Morning. Yeah, I'm following the discussion. Let me tell you that the church is not going to be regulated that easily. Not by the politician in Kenya, because our faith has made us so gullible that we do not seem to listen. And my friend, if you want to be an MCA and you do not visit the nearest churches and probably give some money, no one is going to give you an ear. And the charlatans have gotten the whole of the church, and the kind of hope that they promise us has made us almost, non-reasoning. The politician knows that, Everybody knows that, and therefore the church is going to be there,
Yep.
exploit the faithfuls,
Yep.
the gullible faithfuls, that is. Because let me tell you, faith without reality is dead. If you tell me that today I stay in the house the whole day and I don't work, and that God is going to provide me with, you are telling me that okay, have faith, but in reality you are not tackling it. Therefore, it's unfortunate actually. We have become more Christian than Jesus, and therefore.
But Zachary, you are aware that Jesus himself was not a Christian.
Well, that one is debatable.
He's the head of the faith.
No, Mr. That is Mr. Who? Mr.
City.
that gentleman.
I'm City Munga, but Jesus was not a Christian.
And let me tell you, unless you want to start your church and start telling us that Jesus was not a Christian, and we shall come and
Come and pay your tithe to city.
The Christians became Christians because they were following the footsteps of Christ. So he himself couldn't have been what people were following. He was Christ. He wasn't the Christian. Those who follow him are the Christians. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay, I get you. By the way, you could start a very, very.
It's a philosophical thinking by City, of course, as he always does.
It could be the billionaire in town.
Zachary,
Otherwise, you guys have a nice day.
have a good day,
Thanks,
Zachary.
Zachary.
0719-012-600. Should we or should we not be regulating religious organizations? 2015 is when they were told, okay, you guys go and come up with your own regulations. 4 years, can say 5 years down the road, nothing has come out of it. He has said something that's actually very important. Political expediency. It's the same reason that made the president make that decision in 2016. If you think about it critically, it's the same thing that will happen. Any future government, they'll look at it. If there's a lot of backlash from religious organizations, keep off.
Actually, the one thing that probably keeps most Kenyans sane is that they are a people of faith. Many may not even go to church on a daily basis.
Yep.
But believe me, when you talk to them, they believe there is a God. They believe all sorts of things. And they tell you categorically they believe.
That there's a God, absolutely.
Yes, now, so it's the one area that people feel shouldn't be touched. And again, because of the reputation the government has, and this is probably why you said, if we were to give the church a break and say, maybe they had a point.
Yeah.
Historically, the government has a tendency of bungling things. Yes, they have this tendency. And this particular one...
It's churches protecting themselves.
Yes, this particular government has outdone themselves in the way they've... anytime you think that something can't go wrong, believe me, something worse... something worse
will go
happens.
wrong.
Yes.
Kiprotich Ngeno says on Facebook, the era we are in demands accountability and transparency. Religious organizations are public institutions and they ought to be accountable to their members. Laban Mwangi says some of these so-called churches are not their personal properties. David Weswa, oh yes, the religious groups or organizations should seriously be regulated, Rwanda style. It has saved Rwandans. I don't see why the same cannot be implemented here. Seriously, we have more conmen and conwomen leading religious organizations than the real genuine organization. I mean, allowing this to go on is as good as allowing graft as a norm in the country. Inasikitisha sana. Most of the feedback that we're getting is that, yes, we need to regulate. We need to regulate.
Well, I think it's absolutely necessary
religious
because
organizations.
what we do is that if everybody else needs to follow certain rules within a country, regardless of whether it is divinely, established or not, within a country, there's certain rules that everybody does then have to follow. Again, and I'm speaking about these particular rules that come for the protection of the citizens. Now, it is necessary at least... And the painful part is that they were given an opportunity. Make it however simple you want to make it.
But do something.
Do something about it because we cannot allow it to run in the way in which it has been going. Now, this doesn't mean, again, that it is everybody who is doing this, but that there are certain people, there are certain organizations going rogue, as it were. So let's have some regulation in place that is going to make sure that the rogue ways of certain establishments then will be curtailed. And that, at the end of the day, I think is what is important. Because then it doesn't just allow anybody to come in through the woodwork and then have anything goes situation, which is what we are currently experiencing now.
So long as you have a situation where the church is also associated with God, it can't be associated with anything else, really. And God is almighty and all-powerful. people who subscribe the leadership of such organization also tend to
Be almighty and all powerful.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we know they're only human.
Indeed, they are.
Yes.
I can see Mheshimiwa Grace is trying to call. Mheshimiwa Grace, we're going to the top of the hour. The conversation continues on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE Facebook, at Spice FM KE on Twitter. And also you can tag us at Eric Latif, at CT Muga, at Nduoko. Coming up to 8 o'clock, good morning. This is The Situation Room, broadcasting live from Nairobi to Mombasa to Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri and Malindi.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM. Kisumu.
All right,
Traffic.
so answers as to what's happening on Mombasa Road today. Easily 2 hours to get from the Gateway Mall to Bellevue, and that's what we're seeing this morning from 6 a.m. We're now at 8 o'clock, and people have not been able to go through. There's a situation. A lot of time is being wasted on the road. We need to actually find out what's going on. Perhaps we need to give a cop or two a call and find out what is the problem. All right, Langata Road also giving up those vibes. People have decided to park their cars on the side of the road and take a motorbike. And this is what we see going on there. It is chock-a-blocked all the way far back as the Bomas of Kenya. All right, Ngong Road, of course, we had easier situations, but now it is a parking lot, guys. Trying to get to the City Mortuary roundabout is not happening anytime soon. Thika Road today is where you have a little bit of a smile on your face because it's not so bad. People are moving. We're not at a gridlock like we were Monday, Tuesday. The Eastern Bypass, Utawala, you can use that as an option, folks. You can also use the Southern Bypass, but unfortunately, you're going to get stuck on Langata Road if you're going to use that. So here we are, north, south, east, and west of Nairobi. Traffic. Let us know if you find another alternate. Spice FM KE is where you'll find us on Twitter, or give us a call. Let us know.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have CT Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri and Malindi, 97.7. What are you two talking about? Why are you so excited, Ndu?
CT
Did you see something?
got me feeling a type of way. Oh, yeah.
CT is feeling a certain type of way.
Look, I'm not going to be regulated.
Come on, CT, let's just say it, right?
Yeah. Ndu is happy about the thing she's happy about. Then you ask me why she's happy. How am I supposed to know why she's happy?
Ndu, why are you
Ask
happy?
her. Yes.
CT cut his hair, guys.
Oh. CT Muga
took it
cut
off.
his hair.
You know,
No, he doesn't. He didn't take it off.
No, you don't understand. This is like a...
And John is zooming in.
you know, if to hear
Face
her
the camera, CT.
to hear her
Face the
speak,
camera.
to hear her speak, you'd think that I was wearing my glasses on my teeth, trying to look at the world through my teeth.
What is it? What inspired this?
It wasn't inspiration.
The leave is over. Leave is coming to an end.
What happened? Did the barber visit your house? What, I mean, did you take yourself to a barber and say, cut my hair? And did you say, all right, come,
How does
Is everything okay? Is there a problem?
ikipita 2.5 centimeters, silipi.
Now, why are you two clever people asking me questions that you clearly see you can answer yourselves?
Oh, wow.
Oh, somebody commenting. There's the whole story about Samson and Delilah. City, you still have your strengths.
You know,
You can bring down this
This
building.
is Kenya. When people talk about Samson and Delilah, for all you know, he may be thinking I'm the one who's Delilah. And that sis seems to have more hair. She's Samson.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just when you were inspiring me to let my hair grow,
Yes.
you go on and cut yours. Now here I am. So what do you want me to do? You want me to go and cut my hair?
And keep with my haircut is still longer than yours. So I don't-
Very,
So I
yes.
can
So
still allow it to
you
grow a
can
bit
still
longer.
aspire.
All right.
No, that is if it can grow.
It's curling itself sufficiently.
Pole pole.
Pole pole, it's coming up.
Asante.
Hey, let's talk about wealth.
Hey,
Yours or public servants?
you know,
Choose.
it's very, very interesting. Mine would be talking about something spiritual because it's not very easy to see. But
But you can declare it.
but the manifestations of it, should we say, are periodical. Okay?
Right.
And those periods of its existence or its visibility are also rare. All right? So, one of the things that is truly wonderful about this country is that there are so many things we actually get right. And somehow, unless we mention them and talk about them, it can't be obvious. One of them is just the content of this wonderful constitution that we brought into being. You know, it covered virtually everything. Then came the BBI, and without saying it loudly, now they're being forced to. They have been trying to say, we actually want to actualize some of the things that haven't been actualized in the constitution. People like Professor Yashpal Gai have been saying this for the longest time and saying, look, folks, let's not change too much. Let's just implement the constitution. One of these things that has not yet been implemented and was talked about is something very, very simple. And it is enshrined in the Public Office and Ethics Act of 2002, and which was amended in 2009. And it talks about the declaration of wealth by people who hold public office. And there are three things that it states must be done. That the public officer must, within 30 days of assuming office, declare their wealth. Secondly, that every 2 years when they are still in office, they must further declare what it is they have at that point in time. And then after they leave office is the third thing. Within 30 days, they must also once again declare their wealth. But unfortunately, this to date is something we see not happening. Now, one of the complaints that people have had is that there is an availability of what they call the declaration forms. Now, since 2003, this has been the story. And yet, you know, there is a fine of 1 million attached to this, where if you do not follow these regulations as you ought to. Now, what this seems to manifest is, one, a complete reluctance by people who hold high office. By the way, this is not high office, public servant, low or high. But they clearly seem to feel that they are not beholden to the law, and that they can continue doing whatever they like. Now, if on a simple matter of the Constitution, we have a problem, and there seems to be a complete abrogation of this. Now, think, for instance, when it comes to things like court orders. We've seen the same state officers ignoring direct court orders. This is an example that has been set over and over and over again. So you ask the question, we are placing our faith, we are placing our lives, we are placing the responsibility of the conduct of this country in the hands of individuals who clearly have no respect for the law. Now, if someone doesn't have a respect for the law, you, the individual whose life they're supposed to oversee, how much respect do you think they will have for you? This is what I am saying. I am saying that we need to just not enact the law, it already exists. We need to enforce this, and it needs to be enforced immediately. People who are in public service must declare their wealth, and this declaration must be in the public domain for people to know and to understand.
So you're talking about the hundreds of thousands of people who work in public service. Everybody, you're employed today in government, you go and fill up that form. No wonder the forms are unavailable.
Why?
You can't download it. You can't photocopy it.
Whatever hinders people.
Unavailability of a form means what? I mean, if you go to a police station and they don't have enough P3 forms,
they give you one to go and photocopy.
Go and photocopy.
And if you're smart, photocopy around 10.
Yes.
Your case will be looked at favorably.
So when they say we don't have, availability of forms, part of the reason, of course, we see is the political reasons, right? So nobody wants to talk about their wealth. Even you today, we said today, this morning, let's do this. Let's just a simple exercise. Just declare your wealth publicly.
I can declare my wealth very easily and very publicly.
It won't take you time.
No, it is in a statement.
Yeah.
I have none.
That's what politicians will always do. Of course, I'm ready and willing. When it comes to this audit, lifestyle audit, I am ready and willing. I shall participate in this because it's a very important thing. So we saw the president, was it last year or was it the year before, when he said all public servants should go through a lifestyle audit. And he said he will lead. He still hasn't led. So we still haven't
He led the conversation.
He led the conversation.
Yes, he led the conversation.
Leading the activities, what the
By
politicians
the way,
now do.
let me explain to you that in government offices, actually, you're taken through this process of what is required. You are, periodically. And those forms actually are available. And you're actually required to fill them. In the absence of filling those forms, something as simple and basic as your salary may not be received in that particular month if you haven't done that.
Because you haven't complied.
Oh, no. People do it. It's not that it's not done. This is the truth of the matter. It is done. But it isn't supposed to be done by just a few people within the government or a few people who are in leadership who feel that they have a moral duty to do this. It is actually meant for everybody. It makes sense when everyone does it. That really is the whole point. There are two people who've stood out, and one of our local dailies pointed this out. The late Bob Collymore and the CEO of the Kenya Commercial Bank Group. They out and out declared their wealth and made it public. Meaning, if you want to know how much they're worth, you can know.
This is it. This is how much I make a month.
And this is what I've
I
done.
own.
And this is what I own. You know. And you know what is of interest? You'll read it once, it'll be interesting, and then you forget. I actually have no clue what they earn and
You're
what
done.
they own.
Yeah.
Right. But then the individual who doesn't tell you, you want to keep picking at it. It's like a scab that you want to unearth what's actually under there. In the absence of this information, then you want to know. You keep picking and you want to know really, or then you start to ask yourself the question, and this is the question that many then would have asked thereafter. Is there something that they're then trying to hide? Are there practices in which they've been involved in which would be suspect, at the very least? Is there public money then that has been diverted to give you some kind of wealth? Is there some wealth that you have which it would have been totally impossible for you to put together during the time that you were filling this public office, right? Having known what you earned, is it possible then that you have or have amassed all of this on the salary that you've been receiving every month? And I think those then are the difficult questions that a lot of, public officials then do not want to answer. Because if you did and it was clear and transparent, then really what is the problem?
Actually,
and you're in public office.
No, the difficulty isn't there. In Kenya, most people have grown rich by selling eggs.
Yeah.
This one we figured out.
And chicken.
And
yeah.
chicken. This we know. And they've thrown in cucumbers and watermelons as well. This we understand. But what makes it something of fundamental importance is that when you find nations where the adherence to the law is considered the norm, this happens because it is led from the top. Why? You see it through public officials being mentioned in something that is unpalatable, resigning.
Yes.
You see them even being taken to court.
Yes.
In places developed and forward-looking countries like Korea, you even see presidents being jailed. So, in such countries, it is easy to see that the rule of law will be applied because it applies to everybody. Once there's a leader or people in high position having the law applied to them and the consequences thereof being seen, it is known that the law applies to everyone. In our case, we've gotten to a point where we believe the law only applies to those who are poor.
Everybody else is above.
Yes, especially aspects of the law that may be adverse. If you're well-to-do, it doesn't apply to you because it will never affect you. Now, the thing that actually concerns me is what the message it then sends forth. It then sends forth that there are people who feel that, as you say correctly, not only are they above the law, but the law actually doesn't apply to them. That's number one. But there's an opportunity that has been missed. When there isn't enough example from the leadership, it's an opportunity lost. It's an entire generational opportunity to cement certain morality. It's gone. Because if you don't cement it, then what you've done is the complete opposite. You've actually consigned also an entire generation to a certain way of immoral leanings. That's what you've done. Because essentially you're sending the message that it is okay not to adhere to the law. It is okay to disregard things that don't suit you. That's what you're doing. And then you wonder why you cannot stop this so-called runaway corruption that we keep talking about.
So you've mentioned something here, is that this happens as a matter of fact.
It does.
Public servants usually do declare their wealth. There's the wealth declaration
my friend, is
form,
required of you.
and it comes around.
It comes around.
The
like
problem
it's been
comes
around
with accessing
since
this
January.
information, right? Like now, you cannot go and ask, I want to know how much my boss owns.
It should be in the public domain, actually. That's the truth.
Now, this is where the issue comes in.
Yes.
That law, the current law that operates, does not grant us access to this information easily. When Stephen Saka was asking the deputy president of the BBC interview how much you're worth, and he said it's in the public domain, and I said, actually, it's not. It's not so easily accessible. That was going to be rectified with a new law. We shall discuss that when we come back. It's 8:15.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. The weather with Spice FM.
All right, 27 degrees in Mombasa today, and we're looking at a partly cloudy day throughout until about 6 p.m. and then the sun sets, and of course we get into another day. Eldoret at 14 degrees. It's quite chilly this morning and overcast. Looking at, of course, here in the capital, Nairobi, 17 degrees right now, overcast, and expect some showers in the later part of the day. Skipping across to other cities in Kenya, Malindi at 26 degrees. It's a really warm morning and it's going to be cloudy at some point. Kisumu at 19 degrees and expecting showers through the day. Currently, showers now. 17 degrees in Nyeri and partly cloudy through the day as well.
.1 Spice FM, Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So, when the president, in this renewed fight against corruption, he said, what, one of the things that we're going to ensure, best ways of fighting corruption is ensuring that we have lifestyle audit of all public servants, right? So it emerged soon after he had said that we don't have sufficient laws to govern that. How is that going to be managed? And that's why the public declaration law came into place. This is the bill that's still in the Senate. It's a lifestyle audit bill 2019. It's currently sitting somewhere in the Senate.
Yep.
It's within
It hasn't moved.
It hasn't moved much. This is one that is supposed to guarantee that among those things that it says is access to declarations. The contents of a declaration or clarification under this act, this is when somebody has declared their wealth, shall be accessible to any person upon application to the responsible commission. And here by commission we mean either Public Service Commission, Parliamentary Service Commission, Judicial Service Commission, Teacher Service Commission, in the prescribed manner of if the applicant shows to the satisfaction of the responsible commission that he or she has a legitimate interest and good cause in furtherance of the objectives of this act in such declaration or clarification, provided that prior to the responsible commission making an affirmative decision under this section, it shall grant the opportunity to the affected party to make representation on the matter. Still, it's opening it up, but also it holds it. It says, you applied, for example, to the Parliamentary Service Commission that you'd like to know the wealth of your local MP. The Parliamentary Service Commission shall ask you, why do you want to know? Then you shall come and say, I want to know because I think he's been doing this and the other. All our CDF money, 100 million shillings every year, has gone straight into his pocket.
The PSC made up of parliamentarians?
Yes. And then the Parliamentary Service Commission shall determine and say, Mheshimiwa, there's this guy from your constituency who wants to know how much you're worth. Should we or should we not? What do you think? Oh, then you present your objections or agreement to this, and that's the only time that Eric shall get access to your wealth.
You know, again, we are now debating about public pronouncements and the reality of these pronouncements, isn't it?
Yes.
That it was in our constitution is a wonderful thing. That it's required, it's also a wonderful thing. But the enactment would now make it an extraordinarily wonderful thing if we could actually enact it.
Yeah.
Because then we'd have an opportunity. It's not as though every single day one wakes up in the morning and one wants to sort of like...
Oh, today I want to know how much.
No. But it forces upon not just leadership, but anybody who aspires to leadership. And it imbues a culture of a certain, not openness, but responsiveness to the requirements of the law. This is what is required of you. It's not harmful. We are secretive about it because many people have wealth that cannot really stand very close scrutiny.
No, or cannot be explained.
I think as a society, let's just face it. As a society, we are secretive about our wealth. Start from the people you work with. How much do you earn? Do people go around saying, this? I was given a pay rise last month,
Eric,
and it moved from 75 to only 78.
If you're in a place where you're employed, the reason why we don't kick a fuss about it, people know.
They know anyway.
The way things work in this country, whether it's a private organization, whether it's a government, they will know.
But grapevine.
Actually,
You see,
if a document can be signed in one of our higher offices, and it's an important one, and within minutes it's in
everybody
the
knows about
we
it.
know, and you can see this thing looks genuine. So your salary, that is not going to be secretive. Because
what I'm saying is,
yes,
you don't willingly come forth with that information.
no,
You find out, however, you're going to find out if it's grapevine, if you have somebody
Yes.
who works in HR or in legal, or the CEO is your buddy and they tell you this is how much I'm paying so and so.
exactly, accounts
Our
and
accounts
HR, yes.
and how much we pay this person. If you find, fine. But I am not going to tell you how much I earn.
Actually,
I'm also not going to tell you how much I own. We see that people own stuff and their wives and children don't know what they own.
one now.
It's within us as a society. This is who we are.
But in this case, unfortunately, when you take it to the level at which we're discussing it today, this is the thing. It begs, because you then ask yourself, if people then have been able to acquire a certain amount of wealth over time that is not commensurate to what they earn. Okay, let's assume we know that they earn this.
Yeah.
We know that this is what the state pays you per month
Yeah.
between this amount and the other. Now, if you have a certain amount of wealth that is not commensurate to that amount, of course the questions begin to arise. And then you want to ask, okay, was there mismanagement of funds? Is there thievery, stealing from public coffers? That's where the problem lies. In terms of us not wanting to share, like you say, we're going to know anyway. We're going to know what the amount is. The problem though, is when you have more than
you
can
should.
be not even than you should,
Than
can be explained by how much the state pays you. That's the problem. And this is where, if we talk about having lifestyle audits likened, or rather, pinned to the fight against corruption, there's a reason why. It could have been pinned to anything else. Why was it pinned to the fight against corruption?
Of course, there's a reason why.
Because we're looking at that money has
you want to audit
disappeared
how
from...
I acquired my wealth. Now, the defense that I'm putting forth here is a defense that a politician or any public servant will give you is, look, this is private information.
But you're
So
a
you can
public
go-
official.
It's
You're a public
I am
official,
going,
and
I
this
am going
is
to
pinned
declare
to...
my wealth. It's going to a file, all right? But for you to access that information, we are going to make it as difficult as possible because we already have this law, right?
So
Wealth declaration is already in law. It's already in practice every year. City Muga is confirming it happens.
why is
thing
it
is
so
access to that
difficult?
information.
Why is it so difficult for then us to be transparent? And I think that is what should rock the boat here. Why is it so
it's
difficult
private
for us?
information.
No. In this case, when you're a public official, look at public officials in other countries. There's very little about you that's private, my friend. By the time you're even running for public office, they know your wife, they know your husband, they know how many you had, they know if you smoked a joint in college,
Those
they
ones you
know
can find
where
out
you
is
smoked
fine.
it, all of those things.
Just don't ask
They
me how
know
much
how
I
much
own.
you earn, they know how much you own, they know how much you're intending to purchase in the future. They know this because you're a public official dealing with public funds.
You know the
That's
reason
where it
why
lies.
the emphasis seems to be on public officials is because of the enormous responsibility that they have in terms of just the functions and also in terms of the amount of the country's wealth that is at their beck and
At
call.
their beck and call, that with a snap of the
It's an
fingers,
enormous
really,
amount.
or with
Access to
having
a
a
lot.
Yes.
having a meeting amongst all of you, and then coming to consensus of how this money will be spent. You have that power in your hands. So here, of course, again, we keep saying they're humans. Here, of course, lies the temptation then to do something with it other than that which it was prescribed for in the first place. So let us then know how you live, so that we can be sure that this money for which you've been given responsibility over is not misused.
And I'm putting forth an argument, just for the sake of argument, of countering this argument, is there's already a law and people comply with this law. And it says, when you're starting to work in public service, declare. Periodically, declare. At the end, if you exit public office, declare. Right? It is already there.
But do they do it?
And I'm saying, they do. City is telling us. They do it.
I am telling you that every year there is that declaration.
This happens.
Yes, it happens. Now,
What happens to that information is where that's where the
that's
bone
where
of
the
contention
that's
is.
where the discussion is.
And what I'm saying is, the argument here is, if anybody wants to know, for example, if the DPP in conducting whatever investigation is conducting, or the DCI wants to know, this is what Eric earned when he joined this public organization, and this is how much Eric declared that he owns by the last count, and this is what we found on the ground, what Eric owns and he hasn't declared, then you can conduct that investigation, you can take me to court, right? And I'll be charged the 1 million bob. I'll pay cash, walk out, go home. If you want to increase that, let's have that conversation. However, the issue here is, should the public have access to this information? And that is where the bone of contention is. This is private information. You're telling me to walk around naked. No. It is there. It's contained in law. Let proper organizations that
And
have
the
that
custodians
demand
and the
access to it
custodians of this
have access to
information,
it.
the custodians of this information are your colleagues
Yes.
at the same time, who also have theirs to protect, and there's no way they're going to allow this information to become public.
Actually, the use for this information goes beyond just the declaration. And as Eric is clearly alluding to, if you recall, one of the things that even our would-be parliamentarians or politicians were required to do was to also declare their wealth. Please remember this.
Yes.
And it's for a very good reason. The same reason. Because of your position and the responsibilities, you will have at your beck and call resources, huge resources. Now, when you are asked to declare, it may not be said so, but it's a deterrent. If you look at the issue that surrounded Goldenberg, Youth Fund, and what have you, the big problem that arose was this disparity. You have this money, and we know this is what you earn, and watermelons aren't going to cut it. It doesn't matter how many of these things you grow. This amount of money that
There's
you have,
no way.
it's not making sense. That was it. You own this business, and we can see this sort of business. And doesn't matter how much we do the maths, this
not
amount of
coming
money
together.
in your account, this business cannot justify that amount. It is a protective measure. It doesn't prevent you from doing business. If you're really a businessman, there'll be a clear indication and a correlation between the wealth you have and what you're declaring.
Yep.
Okay. Now, what I found, for instance, if you are seeking to get funding from, say, a U.S. institution, one of the things that you do, they ask you to indicate any conflict of interest you may have when it comes to these things. They take it seriously, by the way.
Yeah.
Very seriously.
It's not as though they're going to investigate you on that day.
No.
But the day they do,
They
and
will
they
find
find
it.
an
And they find
anomaly,
that you had said
At
that
some
you
point,
don't
you
have
had
any.
said something totally different,
that's it.
or that there was no conflict,
It's
there would
done.
have been an issue.
Yes.
And I do agree it's a deterrent, because then at this point, if you're saying that this is what I have declared, this is what I have, it also stops you then from probably putting your hands in the cookie jar, because then something will arise that is not commensurate to that which you said is in your wealth, and you don't want to get in trouble. I'm being prescriptive. You don't want to get in trouble. You really don't. And that's the way it should be with government. And say, look, as a public official, at the end of the day, I'm here to serve the people, right? And I'm here to uphold, the responsibility of this particular office.
Yes.
Declaring your wealth adds to that. Because
It's
then
part
now
of, right?
it is all part of it. Transparency, accountability, responsibility, all of that. It goes along with that. So for me, when you say that you're not going to do it, or that let it be in the hands of a particular few, it's akin to a toddler who's throwing a tantrum in a supermarket and doesn't want to walk because you don't want people to see, the other side of you. Meanwhile, you want them to see the side of you when you're asking them to put you in public office.
course.
It can't. You can't have it. You can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it at the same time, my friend.
This wealth declaration, is it accompanied by evidence? Like when I say I own X number of vehicles or this particular, it's just what I say.
It's a declaration. It's you to declare.
It's me to declare without providing any.
No one asks you to
any
provide
documentation.
logbooks,
No, you
title
declare.
deeds. Just declare.
For
Then
the
this
same
is where
reason,
there's a problem
for
there
the
as
same
well.
reason as in the future when they talk about conflict in interest, we're not asking you to bring documents and account statements. No. Just declare any conflict of interest.
By the
Yes,
way,
no.
Eric, what's
Now,
then
in
here's
the
a problem. I
event
see a
that
problem.
something
Where's the
should
problem?
happen
I see a
later,
problem here.
you
I see
declared.
a-
You told us you have 10 vehicles. Then we come and find out that you have more than that. There's a problem, my friend. because you didn't
I
give the
can start
information.
by
Or you
over-
declare that you don't have any
I
Or you
can
vehicles.
say
start
that I
by
don't have any
over-declaring.
at all.
I can start by over declaring. So if you come and find that I have 10 vehicles, then well, I had already told you I have 10 vehicles, but I had 0.
Eric, they will
Within
not
the course of my serving you, I have acquired these 10 vehicles. I
Yes.
dipped my hand in the cookie jar, and you cannot go back and say
Actually, that
this is what you
isn't
started by
dipping hand in
telling
the
us.
cookie jar. That's taking away the cookie
Completely.
jar.
Almost.
Yes.
So I'm saying, if I go and said I am worth 100 million shillings, and I'm worth 20 million, right? So by the time you come and ask again, you'll find really this guy. He already
You
told us.
see,
He kept telling us he's
that
worth 100
information.
million.
I don't think you are challenging the veracity of that information when you declare it. No, it's not then. But when a lifestyle audit is done, remember the manifestation of your lifestyle is now what will bring forth the discussion we are having. This is what you've declared. This is your lifestyle. It doesn't seem to add up. Yes. You said you owned 10 cars, but you didn't count the 3 that your daughter owns or the 5 that you gave to your cousin. Now, that's where it happens. So we're just asking a simple question. Fine, we know your cousin has 5 cars which you gave him or her. How did you buy them?
But in my argument, where I'm saying I have a problem with this, is where people who are clever cheaters will actually just play the system. I will
Yes.
count my cars, my sister's cars, my cousin's cars, and put all of them as mine in this wealth declaration form. I'm not paying tax over it. I'm not doing anything.
With your intent to steal in the
My
future so that you
intention
can
is
come
to
and
have this number of cars in 5 years.
we'll still catch you out, my dear.
How?
Because then we realize that it's something that you did
How?
for the future.
Eric, when you fill that form, what is being tested is your honesty.
It's the honesty
if,
that they're
if
looking
you say
for.
if you fill 10 cars, that's already a red flag. They'll ask Eric, whose job is XYZ. How on earth did you get 10 cars?
I have a business. Which
Which
business?
one?
I am.
No. That's what I'm saying.
I
But,
am a
but you see what Eric
shareholder.
is
I am
doing.
a shareholder in my
He
brother's
explains.
big business.
Yes, I won the lottery. Whatever it is,
I only have 10% or 5% shareholding in my brother's business, but I'm claiming part of that wealth
believe
in
me,
this particular form.
the problem isn't what you just declare, but it's the fear of what is actually true being found out. So it is rare that somebody will over declare unless they are really genuinely very clever and they know how to play around
So
with
mostly
these things.
people are under declaring.
Oh,
Let's
yes.
take a look at
Or
traffic
not
and then
declaring
continue
at
with this
all in this
conversation. 28 minutes to 9 o'clock. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. CT Muga is saying we should ensure that we enforce the laws that call on public servants to declare their wealth. And then let's also find ways of making this information available to the public for clear transparency. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. 87.9 Spice FM. Mombasa. Traffic.
All right. I think now what it is that people are saying Langata Road is bewitched. Unfortunately, we have traffic all the way from the Galleria Mall, and it's not letting up all the way to the T-Mall roundabout this morning. Today, though, Bagathi Way can be used as a way to get into the city centre as opposed to following the route to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. So there's an option for you to use if you're on that particular road. Thika Road, of course, getting into the city a little bit better now, and it's not so bad. Ngong Road from the Junction Mall now is better, and it is flowing smoothly now. Mombasa Road, of course, we still have what we see from the North Airport Road Junction leading onto the main road. Traffic is bumper to bumper still, but you'll get some reprieve right past Bellevue now. Okay, we'll see what it looks like in a short while, but from a lot of the major roads doing a lot better. Getting from Westlands, of course, into the city centre much better now. Spice FMK is how you can reach us on Twitter. If you see something out of the ordinary, give us a call, 0719 012 600.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
If you're just joining us, this is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, right here on Spice FM, broadcasting in Nairobi, you're 94.4. We're in Mombasa, 87.9, Kisumu 102.5, 96.0, in Nakuru, 96.7, in Eldoret, 90.9, in Nyeri, 97.7, in Malindi, www.spicefm.co.ke. We live stream the show every morning. This is the first and only 24-hour audio-visual radio station. This means that you can watch this show on our digital platforms. Spice FM KE, Facebook, we are live streaming. We are live streaming on Twitter, Spice FM KE. We are on YouTube, Spice FM KE, and also on www.spicefm.co.ke, talking about public officers' declaration of wealth.
You know, what is actually interesting about this is that the guidelines as to how you go about this is actually online. It's something you can actually download and read.
Mm-hmm.
It exists. It's not. So when people say that it's not available, you actually have to wonder what on earth they're talking about. Yes. And the only problem with the document is that it's not that daunting. You probably have something like 23 pages of it, but it's something that you can read, and it gives you details. It tells you about financial declaration. It tells you about dates, the period. It tells you so many things, and all the forms that are required are available. Okay? And these forms, there are 9 forms.
9.
It's too much, eh?
Well,
There are 9 forms.
Wealth by its very nature.
Wait.
is
So are you
exactly-
declaring per limb or what? My arm is worth this much. Form 1. Form number 2.
Wealth having been
My head
acquired
is
by
what?
business, by family.
Well,
Explain the 9 forms. 9.
well, actually, they are actually not even, and they are 10 actually.
I will not ask again. They will
Just when
become
you,
11.
just when you thought it was safe to get out of the, but let me just look at it so that I can explain to you what they're called PAC forms. All right.
Yes.
One is just a declaration of income, assets, and liabilities.
Right.
Okay, it's not just income. Okay, your name, whether you're married, where you come from, physical address, the usual things that you fill when you're opening a bank account. All right. Then you name the names of your spouse or spouses. You know, there's another page, okay, etc., etc. Name of dependents, etc., etc. And just so that you understand, for spouse, they give you 5 spaces, just in case.
Right.
Okay.
They want you to feel
If you're
that
spiced up.
you've been underrepresented.
Yeah.
5. Okay. Children, they give you 7. Okay. All right. Then when you're through with this, they will want you to talk about your name. You've declared this as the rightful statement, blah, 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 etc., etc., etc. Then you're going to now describe, this is page 3 now, you're going to describe what you earn and the approximate amount, whether it is salary, whether it is rent, crop production, livestock, money, whatever it is, Harambe Sacco, whatever and wherever it is you have money, you list it, and then you give a total, all right? Then the next document is a continuation of the same, whether it's ancestral land, etc., 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 all those things, all right? Now, this carries on to the next page, and then they ask you to give other information that may be relevant.
Other information that may be relevant. So
Like-
this is where, if, for example, number 5 was you had more than 5 wives, you can add here.
You can add that I have
Got
this-
More than
Six,
7
right.
children, you add here.
I have an additional expense.
Yes.
Anticipated wife number 6.
Call it what you may.
Right?
Because for them to be anticipated, they're actually a current cost.
Yes.
So they are a current cost. So you indicate that. And if there's a plot you're in the process of buying or a matatu you're negotiating for,
Yeah.
those are things you also indicate. All right? And then you will sign. There'll be an officer from your place of work who will indicate that, yes, they have witnessed this, etc., and that will be it. Now, these forms, as I said, indicate very, very clearly, for instance, if that is you personal, then there's where you work, the other details of where you work, how you work, all right?
Other sources of income.
Yes, they start with the name of the officer to whom this form is issued. That is you now.
Right.
All right? Your personnel number, 003300, whatever it is,
Yes.
okay? Date of delivery of form to the officer, okay? Today. Signature of receiving officer. Date of declaration delivered by the officer. Signature of officer receiving the declaration. Remarks, if any. Now, those are government forms for you. All right? Now, again, remember, then there are these forms by various ministries. Okay? If you belong to this ministry, you indicate this. If you belong to this ministry, you indicate this. It's very detailed, meaning they want to capture even more things than banks do.
It's a lot of information,
It is a lot of information.
which is all well and good. I'm fine. All of you public servants, it's fine. We have a law and it requires you to do this, and you follow the law, and therefore you actually end up filling out these forms and submitting them to your superiors. Good. Now comes the issue of accountability. How do we hold you accountable for the wealth that you have declared, or the wealth that you shall declare in future? Who has access to this information? So we can say that yes, police investigating agencies with reason will have access to this information. Does it mean that even your boss can sit there and think, and this guy, the way he's
No,
behaving
but your
lately,
boss has access to that information.
Yes, I'm
He
sure
signed
they would.
Because remember, not only signed, he is the person who has to write officially. The way you get these forms, you write officially to the government and say, I have X number of
staff.
workers, yes, and I need this. So, and he knows who
He
you
already
are.
has,
and
has
he will look
access.
at those forms.
All right.
They do look.
All right. So he has access to it, but he cannot publish this information. He can't go and say, but
he
you
can't.
guys.
No, he
this-
can't. It can't be made public. Of course not.
So what's the point?
The purpose, my friend,
And that's why when we ask politicians declare your wealth, right? Are we being unfair to them?
No, we're not.
Are we, when you ask public
No,
servants, when you
no.
ask a certain CEO, if you ask the DPP here, Bono DPP, how much are you worth?
it's actually important that we should ask him for the simple reason because his job, again, we stated this at the very beginning.
This is living in that what the Catholic bishops are calling utopian world.
No,
no,
unfortunately,
no.
because of the kind of corruption, the in-depth, to the core, to the bone corruption we've seen happening in this country. When you are in a position of public office, the temptation to then, of course, be one of the characters that deals around corruption is very, very strong. You want a situation where people are transparent
open
and
as
as
possible.
open as possible.
But we are
so as
leaving
to
this to the
remove,
goodness of their
so
hearts.
as to remove. That is
Actually,
the problem.
no, it isn't
so
the
as
problem
to
even.
remove the taint
we're saying
that could come
if-
from corruption.
If you so will.
If you're in public life, one of the things that is actually expected of you is that you will actually be living and conducting yourself with a certain high moral standard.
We would hope so.
That's
right?
why we
Yes.
leave it to you to declare.
To declare. Exactly.
As I told
Tell
you.
us.
And for
You-
me to make it public.
It doesn't.
The declaration, because you know, CT,
It's
that
you
this
who's declaring it.
Yes.
Remember, public is that you've documented it voluntarily. Well, it's not really voluntarily, but you've actually
Documented it and
you've
written it.
documented it and left it.
But there's a security that you have in the fact that this is still staying within certain confines.
Is that security
Yes, it is.
really?
The only
is it-
people,
is it-
the
is it-
only people who have access, who have official access to this information, are documented. You
how
know who has access
those
to this.
who have declared
If this
their wealth,
information
how
leaks-
has it killed them?
How has it killed them?
Those who've declared their wealth, are they not still alive? Still
they're-
going about their business. In
yes.
fact, as CT said, we've actually forgotten about it.
They're still
They've
alive.
declared
for
their
now.
wealth, we continue, no problem.
You
They're
read it
carrying
day
on with
one
their
and-
business.
and
You
so
read
are
it on
you.
day one and you go. You continue with your business, they continue with theirs. But now this constant wanting to shroud it in some kind of secrecy, we don't want people to know. You're letting people speculate and say, there's some money somewhere that's not doing, that has done
when
what
you
it should
start-
not
when
do,
you start being
or been
questioned
taken
by-
from where it shouldn't have been taken from.
When you're questioned by other people, for example, we saw during the vetting of police officers by the Kavuludi Commission, right? When they were going around the country, it's not that those officers had not filled out some forms. They had, but now here we are. Okay, so we are vetting you, and this is how much you said you own. We see in your bank account you have this much. So if this is how much you've declared that you own, and this is how much is in your account, how did you acquire it? Start saying, I keep cows. I
sell skuma wiki.
I sell skuma wiki. My wife is a very entrepreneurial person, and
She
we have
sells
the
even
same
more skuma
account.
wiki.
We do this and the other. This is where the issue, start coming in. I have no problem that, like I said, declare all you must. If you must declare, but making it public. This is where our problem lies. People do not want to make it public, and we do not have ways of making it public.
Why don't they want to make it public? And
There
I
are
think
those
that is the
there-
problem.
There are those that do it because of whatever nefarious reasons, because they want to hide information, and there are those that don't want to make it public because they're not public. They don't live public lives. This is private information.
The enforcement of this law that I was speaking of, remember I said there were 3 things that are required of public officers.
Yep.
Okay? The declaration as you enter the office, every 2 years if you're still in office, and 30 days within 30 days after you leave office. Even if you look at that pattern, it's supposed to indicate that we want to determine whether you've been living within your means or if by any chance you may have done something. Eric, these things are not difficult to determine. If someone is a business person and they're doing business, you cannot start a business today, 2020, and in 2021 you're a billionaire. Not possible.
Even if you are Alibaba.
And the 7 dwarfs.
Don't worry.
Okay.
All of those people.
Okay. Sorry, have I got something wrong here?
It's a 40 thieves.
So it was Snow White who was with not
the 7
It
guys.
wasn't Snow White and the 40 Thieves.
No.
It was Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. Okay, got it.
Eric, you have to help me with CC today. They should go and put back your hair, beg.
So it was Alibaba with wives and who?
You just
Snow White with the
sit down.
thieves.
Leave that. Go and sit down.
Come on, go and sit down.
If you are in public service, you have chosen to be in public service. And the responsibility of anyone in public service is enormous.
Huge.
Now, because of the enormity of it and the enormity of the responsibility, which also involves enormity of resources, there has to be a check and balance. Even within, believe me, private entities, people declare wealth. Just like you declare conflict of interest, you declare.
Yeah, exactly.
Even there, they want to determine, because even in private businesses, resources are available, but not as much as the government. There is no enterprise in this country
That has
as much money as the government. Sorry. And anyone who will tell you they've made a lot of money, most of it is by doing business with the said government.
Same government, exactly. And that's the thing. If it's going to be hidden, if you don't want, for the sake of not wanting to, or for the sake that those 9 forms are too many to fill, or whatever other kind of reason that they're going to give, at the end of the day, by virtue of the fact that they've said they don't want to, or that they will not, or they haven't really gotten round to it, gives all of us the perception that there's something that they choose to hide. And if there's something that they're hiding, then perhaps the honor of that office is not something that then they should have. If you don't want to declare wealth, I would be like Twale Bensei as well. Come on, go and sit down.
This is it. Come on, go and sit down. This is what the
If you don't want to declare your wealth and liabilities officially, leave the public service. Forget being a state officer. When unakuwa na shambako kupanda ndizi, fuga ng'ombe, nobody will bother with you.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Spice FM. Nyeri.
Sugar and spice is everything now.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
If you don't want to declare your wealth and liabilities officially, leave the public service. Forget being a state officer. When unakuwa na shamba huko, panda ndizi, fuga ng'ombe, nobody will bother with you.
All right. So if you don't want, just leave the public service. It's okay. We now know that people are, filling out those forms. They're declaring their wealth. They are doing the wealth declaration. But we have no access to that information. Of what use is it to us?
Actually, it is of a lot of use. Remember, one, as I've said, it's a deterrent, all right? Mm-hmm. And if you actually enforce the law, then the deterrents will actually play the part it should.
How would we enforce the law? So say you have declared wealth and people have filled up the forms. That's already enforcement of that law, right?
It is.
By using those carrots and sticks.
It is, but it isn't complete. You need to verify that information. That information probably gets verified when when someone has something against you and they want to use that information against you, not for you. Mm. If we all know that information will be varied or verified, you are going to ensure that you declare something which is as close to the truth as possible. Yes. And it can't be difficult because remember, it's department by department, section by section. And all these sections are supervised. It's not difficult. It's not difficult to determine whether these things are true or not. And then you have an HR department. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know that the Public Service Commission would actually come in and would assist with such a thing. But the truth of the matter is that if you actually want to understand and get to the bottom of or to verify the reality of the declarations, you could. Now, the knowledge that information will actually be verified, that in itself is a further deterrent.
Right.
So it means when I'm a public servant, if I am inclined towards being nefarious, I am going to be really very, very careful.
Very, very careful. You're going to watch your back. You're going to watch your tracks and make sure that you don't do anything. Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, what should override all of this is that, look, you're in public service and really there to protect what should then be for the development of the people. Now, if you're suspected to be taking some of these funds and doing something for yourself, then of course there lies a problem. And I think he's very justified in what he's saying, Twalib here, where he says, look, if you can't, if for some reason you don't want to declare, that means that you're hiding something. And if you're hiding something, then you should not be in this office.
I think
it sounds very, very simple, but I think at some point we need to take things for their simplicity and say, this is then how we should run. Let's not complicate it in so many convoluted ideas and say this and the other thing. No. You can't do this as simple as we're asking you to do because we've already established the reasons why we are asking you to do something like this. If you are unable to do it, then
just leave. Go. But the lifestyle audit bill, I think, also answers a couple of those questions because this is where we are saying we are going to look at your lifestyle versus what you've declared as your wealth, right? And see, do they correlate? Now, just like with all the other laws, if the public does not participate in this particular process and being very vigilant on what kind of law, what clauses are inserted in these laws, it's never going to work. We will have another law that comes into place. It's called the Lifestyle Audit Law, just like we have the other one, the Public Officers Ethics Act, and the others that ensure that you declare your wealth. But information is shrouded in secrecy. And the information that you provide, you're providing information that cannot be verified. Or there are no mechanisms of verifying this until the very last moment. It doesn't...
When you say it can't be verified until the very last moment, but last moment when what happens exactly?
Last moment is in case after money has been stolen and then you're coming back to look at your lifestyle and then seeing this is the wealth that you declared, how much do you own now?
No. I don't think that's the primary source of determining that government or public money has been misappropriated. That's a totally separate thing.
And it's coming to you to see how much of it came to you.
Yes. Now, there are people who are clever enough to ensure that their lifestyle doesn't change. Yes.
Oh, they'll make sure that they can keep it, to the bare minimum while they know that I'm not going to be here forever.
They simply live within their means.
Very simplistic life. Cut their coat according to their cloth.
Until they leave
will
office.
Not show you until they leave office. And even after that, you might find that they would, maintain that lifestyle for some time until the dogs are off.
Stealing for future generations.
You never know.
Whatever it is,
it was for.
Unfortunately, the vast majority of people don't have that sort of discipline. Yes, it's what you call conspicuous consumption.
Yep.
It must be seen that you have it. All right. And if it isn't seen, then you feel there is no need to have it. You buy a
Why
car.
am I stealing if I'm not going to use it?
Is exactly. You buy a car that is more expensive than most houses, something of that sort.
Yeah.
So it's clear, and someone knows that you're XYZ, and you're clearly not the CEO. But it is actually known that you're in the procurement department. Red flag.
It's direct.
Red flag, because these fancy vehicles that people buy, people do understand and people do know what they cost, even if they're second hand.
I still hold, CT, that unless the public is actually more vigilant on these things, the law is there. Just like you started by saying in your editorial this morning, the law is there.
Actually,
the law is there. It's about enforcement of that law. It's about enforcement in this particular case. It's already being enforced. I think it's about public access to this information. That is one very clear check and balance.
One of the things that happened and which was of interest is that this particular law even went to the teachers, and the Teachers Service Commission also wanted this. Remember, teachers are public officers.
Yes.
All right? And it's with good reason. If you understand how our schools work and how they function, it is, when you're a head teacher, you're actually in charge. When I say in charge, literally.
You're the kingpin.
You're the boss.
It's literal. You're answerable to people who are not there on a daily basis. It's you.
Yeah.
Now, it is an understanding that power has a tendency of convoluting the values that people have. And it's also the understanding, again, that public coffers are the most in any country. Again, I'm repeating myself here. It's this understanding that makes this thing mandatory, in my opinion, or should be made mandatory, because the temptations are enormous. What is available, what you have, what you can do with it, and what you've seen others do with it, if there isn't a deterrent, and the deterrent is enforcing it, just ensuring, as I said, you go beyond just declaring. You ensure that you know that there will be a verification process.
Yes.
Remember, you are supposed to declare 30 days upon arrival, and then every 2 years. There's time to verify.
There's time to verify, absolutely.
It isn't as though they want in the next
your term of office.
Yes, there's time. It's not as though they're going to verify it tomorrow. You have time to verify. And even if you wanted to verify what someone has or doesn't have when they leave office, 30 days, that's enough time to verify if you want to verify. You bring in the other government agencies who know how to go about this business. And you do have them. After all, they are government agencies. And they do know. And remember, one of the things that the government has done over time, the moment you are given a PIN number, and the moment a PIN number is required for each or everything that you do, it isn't difficult to track your financial dealings. It isn't difficult to track the things that you do. Because if you have a credit card, there's a PIN attached to it. If you have a debit card, there's a PIN attached to it. Man, there's a PIN everywhere.
For all the bills you're paying.
PIN.
There's a PIN.
In fact, the next thing they're going to acquire, you acquire more than one wife, second wife, PIN.
It shall be all information. Ngeno Walter on Facebook says the president should lead by example, and then public officers will follow suit. This is in the Declaration of Wealth publicly, right? So as we wait for this law, right, as we wait for the lifestyle audit law to get to him so that he signs it and becomes, why can't he just lead by example and say, you know what, just as a show of good faith, this is what I am saying. This is how much I'm worth. This is exactly what I own. This is how much you pay me every month. This is what I am worth. And this is my lifestyle. You know my lifestyle. Everything I'm doing right now as president, it's on your cost. I live in your house. I drive your vehicles.
He actually doesn't live in our house.
He does.
It's not our house.
State House is our house.
No, he doesn't live there. That's his office. That's where he works from. The house he lives in isn't ours.
No, it's not yours.
If he chooses to go and stay elsewhere, that's his choice. But
Yes,
we have provided
a
home
house
for him.
for him to stay. We have provided vehicles for him to use. We have provided everything, security, papers, anything that he requires as a president. He can tell us, this is my lifestyle, guys. All right?
I think he should actually lead by example here. and it's something like that. In this case, it's got to come from top to bottom. And I think here he has to be the one to say, look, this is what,
because everybody else, including his deputy, says, I'm
waiting
for
my boss to tell me
when
the
he
direction
does
in which we should go. When he goes,
number two.
And the person who coined the term that, the fish rots from the head knew what they were talking about. So in this case, if you don't have the gentleman at the top telling you, then that's going to be an excuse that many are going to use for this and say, we will not also
waiting for the Oga at the top.
There you go.
In government offices, believe me, everyone fills these forms.
And gives to the immediate supervisor.
The truth of the matter is you failed them, and they exist. That's really what's fundamental here.
Yeah.
If you are, say, the CEO, it may have to go to the HR department. Now, the truth of the matter, again,
Or
is
the
that
board.
No, board are not
Not
executive.
necessarily.
Not really. No. Board are not executive. They're not involved in the day-to-day running of that particular institution. No.
Oh, actually, in government, then it'll go to your seniors.
Yes.
There are seniors.
Yes. If you are a director, you'll have
Goes to a senior one.
PS, like that, up to minister. So, I mean, if you follow, it's not as though the ministers fill and then give it to the president. It doesn't work like that. There's the Public Service Commission that handle these things, and every ministry has an HR department. Responsibility is something we seem to run away from, and responsibility is something that we seem to not only run away from, but if it doesn't seem to serve any direct purpose for us, it's something that we avoid, and yet we forget that there's a greater good that is not being served. This opportunity to create an atmosphere of responsibility and accountability is actually slowly being lost.
All right. Good points. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. The weather with Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, taking a look at what's happening on Mombasa Road right now, still at 9 o'clock, and it's absolutely packed. And of course, the question is, what is going on here? We don't have those answers right now, but we know that there's a huge influx of traffic, and we know that many more vehicles are on the road this particular week. We don't know why, but it's not moving. It's just going to have to exercise quite a lot of patience and safety discipline on Mombasa Road today. All right, coming off of Westlands, not so bad either. Getting into town, traffic has dissipated. Thika Road also is not so good. Langata Road still bumper to bumper. We're at a gridlock there as well. Of course, traffic hour is officially over, but quite a number of people still stuck on the roads, and traffic still at heightened levels around the city. Taking a skip over to Mombasa, where we had within the town, especially Mombasa Road, Moi Avenue, quite blocked at some point. Of course, that has dissipated as well, and not so much in that area. Let us know what you see. Let's see what we can share. Spice FMKE on Twitter, 0719-012-600. We'll try to keep it moving as best we can.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Remember, you can join the conversation at any point in this show on Spice FM KE, Facebook Spice FM KE, on Twitter, as well as YouTube Spice FM KE, or you can call in 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Let's talk about culture and modernity and laws, right?
Right, of course, always the marriage between law and culture. And in this case, we saw quite a number of cultural traditions that have been practiced here in Kenya, in different parts of the world. And at some point, these cultures seem to have been detrimental to the life of, in this case, we're looking at the life of young girls, young women. And we want to put this vis-a-vis the kind of representation we want to see at a national level where women are concerned. Now, if you want to take a look at what's happening currently, about 10 years ago, there was a huge clamor, there was push and pull for making sure that some of these traditional practices, which had been in place over a long period of time, would essentially come to an end and say that, look, we can't have this anymore. The FGM that we see is essentially destroying people's lives. The early marriage, young girls are then not allowed to go to school, and they're not able to actually reach their full potential, as it were, because they were not able to then access an education. Now, when we look then at representation of women at the national level or representation of women at government level, we say, look, we are still hinged on quite a lot of tradition. We're still hinged on the fact that the patriarchy is still real and that it exists. So there has been no wiggle room then to allow women in, not because they don't, not because they cannot, but because they will not. And a lot of this is still hinged on tradition. Why do I say it's hinged on tradition? We've seen the law come in to stop some of these cultural practices, but then we've also seen the cultural practices still find their way in the door, with what we see right now as having been reported, that young girls still being married off at a very early age, still being circumcised, still being given off, and parents then taking dowry. However, what do? These parents, these husbands, they still make sure that these young girls are enrolled in schools. So she's a student during the day and she's a wife at night, because they want to make sure that they can, one, get this dowry, that they can, two, preserve this cultural practice of having young girls marry at a very young age so that she grows with her children, essentially. Now, I'm saying at this point, with what we see and what we've experienced over time, this representation that we see on a higher level, to say that, yes, we want to see more women practice at that level, it is going to be very difficult to do unless we fully understand the reasons why these cultural practices are in place, until we fully appreciate and comprehend where these cultural leanings are taking us. Now, there's a clamor. I mean, in today's media, reporting across the board, we're talking about putting an end to FGM, putting an end to early marriage, putting an end to all of these things that's upon which culture seems to be hinged, upon which people still are refusing to run away from. And I'm saying, until we have a full and complete total understanding of where culture lies, it will be very difficult to have this translated onto a representation level in government. We have stories across the board. I mean, we talked several times about, putting an end to things like FGM, putting an end to things like, early childhood marriage. Group upon group has come into the country. We've talked, the songs have been sung over and over again. But then for us to understand why this is, and that why still they hold on to this thing with as much fervor as they have. Here we have reported stories, I mean, today, as recent, as current as today, whereby the law now is battling with culture, right? We have district, we have chiefs, we have district commissioners at some level trying to make sure that, the law is upheld. However, we say we have people now who are finding ways to circumvent the same law and make sure that their culture is still maintained, really having a fight for this particular culture. In the example that we give right now, where we have quite a number, to the point that it has been reported, of young girls who are students during the day and wives and mothers at night. So what do? They're still marrying off their girls at 10 and 11. They're still taking dowry on the heads of their children. But then it comes with a condition so that they can make sure that they're on the right side of the law. So that anybody who comes along would say, okay, you know what? We married her off at an early age. Yeah. She went to her husband's house at 10, 11. But she's a student. She's in school. She has what she needs in order to survive. And by the time she gets to that age where maybe she needed to do something, she will have had an education.
So she'll still live through, the whole essence of bringing in that law is to ensure that we're not stopping children from being children and forcing them into another lifestyle. So if she's still going through school, if she's still interacting with her fellow students, if she's still living her life as an adolescent and teenager within the environment that other adolescents and teenagers are living,
then it is fine, according to them.
What's the problem?
What is the problem? And this Bomet County Commissioner, interestingly, said, what we've seen is that now we see a trick that these are called, right now, they're offenders. Because according to the law, you will not marry off a child It's against the law.
Yes.
You will not marry off a child. And because we're looking at their rights to access to education, we're looking at their rights to have been built up socially, etc., etc. Now, coming out of Bomet, just one example, because we see this rife in certain parts of the Rift. We see this rife in Masai land. And what he said, interestingly, is that local communities still hold on to archaic cultural practices, withdrawing their daughters from school, subjecting them to circumcision, and marrying them off for dowry. Now, due to the pressure that administrators and government agencies have asserted on the society, as well as the implementation of the Children's Act, offenders have devised new methods to circumvent the law, marrying off young girls and then enrolling them in school. And this is according to Jeffrey Omoding, who is the Bomet County Commissioner. And he said, this is what we are faced with now.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, culture is still ruling the day. And they're not looking at it as abuse. They're not looking at it as a curtail on the rights of these girls. What they're looking at is that culture still must prevail at the end of the day.
Of course.
This is what we want to do.
Look, I think sometimes we speak with one side of the mouth and then tomorrow we speak from the other side of the mouth. We have a Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage promoting culture. We have now a new day that we're calling Utamaduni Day, promoting our cultures. If we want to promote our cultures, then let's accommodate that culture. Let's not call some things archaic. Let's find ways of working around them. So in this particular case, so if you're saying that a young girl, in this particular community and culture, girls are married off at certain ages. So work around it and see. So let's not call it marrying off. Let's say, it's an arranged marriage, but you shall officially get married to this girl at this particular age.
Well, apart from enforcing
past
the children.
18. So the girl shall go through school. Yes, you shall take up responsibility, for example, of educating this girl at the age of 13 through high school. But this girl shall formally become your wife at 8. Why don't we try and promote such kind of things instead of just fighting
Let me ask the question. What we're talking about from a legal perspective is age of consent. Is that not so?
At the end of the day, it comes to that, right?
Okay. When it comes to FGM, I actually understand very, very clearly the amount of attention it has received and why it has, and rightfully so. But age of consent is a bit hypocritical because there's this focus on certain groups in Africa and in Kenya, and it's as though these people have this barbaric practice that other people in the world have moved away from, and actually this is not true. There are many countries in the West who have an age of consent at 14. You cannot get more adolescent than a 14-year-old.
Imagine.
14, meaning, should I mention Germany? Okay.
Age of consent to do what?
Have sex. Which means a 19-year-old can have sex with a 14-year-old.
With a 14-year-old.
Yes. So it also means you could live consent. You can consent to allow someone to have sex with you. Consent.
Right.
So we can have 15-year-old mothers.
You can have 14-year-old mothers, you can have 15-year-old mothers, but they'd better be 14. If they're 13, you'll
in
be
trouble.
You're in big trouble. You're thinking of this. China, 14. Nigeria, 11.
11, actually. Now,
Yes,
Yes,
11, age of consent.
in Nigeria
11.
is 11.
Yes.
Legal official.
Yes, official legal. Angola, the Philippines, 12. Japan, 13. So this thing about the Maasai and the Hu and the Pokot and marrying off their children, pause for a while and just understand that they're developed countries whose age of consent is exactly at that level. And they've legalized it now, which is a greater evil. As we're fighting it. We're saying, this is a child, this person is too young to be making such decisions. In fact, if you look at the world, the country with the biggest age of consent is actually Portugal at 21. Now, the Islamic states that follow Sharia law, it's different. You can only have sex when you're married.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how old you are.
That's your
And
problem.
age of marriage.
For men, say Pakistan is 18, girls it is 16 on average. So if you look at Kenya and you compare them to the other countries, yes, it is important for us to safeguard our children. It is important for us to ensure that a child actually gets an opportunity to live as a child and to enjoy the benefits of being a child instead of being foisted into adulthood at a time when they know very well that isn't the right time. Adulthood is the rest of your life.
Yes.
This childhood is the shorter period of your life if you're alive. But let's have a perspective and be realistic and understand that we shouldn't look at this thing from the perspective that we are backward and we are not no.
And from a very straight line, that it's either this way or
Yes.
the highway.
Can it be?
This is wrong.
I don't think it can be. And I think at this point, really understanding that a lot of leanings are traditional. You can have somebody who was born and raised in what you would call an urban setting, but still leans on these traditional beliefs.
Yes.
And that is what we have fueling a lot of the decisions, or in some cases, the non-decisions for the representation that we have, in government at that level. But if we go back to this, look at now what the law, even those who now are the custodians of the law, unfortunately, you find that maybe they don't even actually believe in this thing. They do believe that, yes, she can go to school during the day, but there is a role that she must fulfill in, at home at this point, and say, look, this is what we are looking at. However, the law, according to the Children's Act, upon which Kenya hinges some of these decisions, is that no, there should be some protectionism that, is around this girl at this age. She should be able to go to school. She doesn't need to be subjected to some of these things at this age.
It's okay.
Because she's going to school.
It's okay.
According to, I'm just finishing what the law says.
Right.
She doesn't need to be subjected to some of these things at this age.
At
She's
this
too young.
age,
She should be going to school.
Yeah.
She should be able to develop socially. She doesn't need to be taking care of other children because she is a child.
Makes sense.
Right? She should be able to develop socially.
Makes
now,
sense.
culture, according to them, these practices by culture circumvents these same things that the Children's Act is supposed to be upholding. And that is where the problem is. You see?
I think the beef that I have, and this is where, those who have cases against Western-funded civil society organizations have a field day. This is it. This whole debate is actually being funded, and it's completely pushed by these civil society organizations, Western-funded. They're like, they come in here and they're saying, this is how things should run, this is how things should be done. Don't consider anything else. Just the same way when the Mzungu came with religion and they told us everything else that we were doing was evil and was wrong. Any other thing that you called, traditional cultures and rites that you're performing in religion were wrong. And the only other rites that you should perform are these ones that are called Christianity. This is the only right way. This is where we go wrong. We should find ways of balancing things out. For example, saying, yes, we have children. We have our cultures that said children shall get married at this is how marriage happens in our society. How do we marry the two? How do we ensure that we, protect the rights and, and what this child should be getting at this particular age in their life, while at the same time accommodating culture. You can get married, but you will not move in. You can be called, you can know that, you will be so-and-so's wife, if that is what your culture believes in and that's how you're practicing. You are choosing also to practice this culture. You can go ahead and do that. The Asian community, you're booked at an early age. You grow up knowing.
It's got to be truthful.
Yes, this is who's going to be my husband. But that wedding is going to happen when you're both adults. This, we should find ways of accommodating it. Let's take a look at the weather and then we continue the conversation, right? 16 minutes after 9 o'clock. Good morning. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. The weather with Spice FM.
Right, so a hot day in Malindi today at 29 degrees. It's going to be partly cloudy, but yes, quite warm there. Kisumu at 19 degrees is still experiencing some showers today, and this is going to last all through the day. Taking a look at Nyeri weather today at 19 degrees, but slightly overcast. We won't have much rain in Nyeri today. Of course, Nairobi, we're standing firm at about 17 degrees this morning. Going to be slightly overcast, and of course, we have some showers. It'll warm up in a little while. Eldoret right now is still a bit chilly, but has risen just a little bit to 15 degrees and is going to be overcast through the day as well. Mombasa standing firm again right now, quite warm at 29 degrees, partly cloudy. That's what it's going to look like around the country today.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Nduoko is raising the issue of culture versus modern laws and how the cultures and modern laws are conflicting. and then ending up disadvantaging our society as a whole.
No, definitely. And I think it's about time because, look, there's not going to be a greater champion for women rights than me. But at this point, I think we need to understand that if we don't invite two of these to the table, we're going to have a very difficult time, especially when we are looking at representation in the future. Look at the two-thirds gender rule that has been in limbo, for some time. Are we going there? Are we not? Are we going to discuss it? We don't have enough in terms of, numbers, in terms of quorum on the House to even come and have the conversation. Because there are still people who are stuck on that mentality that, look, there are some things that we can't even introduce. There are some things we cannot even have a discussion around. Why should we be discussing them? Why then don't we want to change? Look, we've been able to move, right? At some point, people were not even sending their daughters to school. Let's start there because it was culturally the girl stays at home.
Boy goes to
waits
school.
To be married because you will then go and then move on somebody else's family.
Yes.
That is what we saw time after time. And then you were to be provided for. So you didn't need to go to school to get an education to then eventually go get a job. It was not necessarily because somebody was going to take care of you. Now, we then saw that a lot of parents then started sending their girls to school because they saw the benefit of doing so. And then it caught on. After some time, people saw that. Now, we're getting to the point whereby we are now taking a leap and saying, even beyond that, let us then get women into positions of leadership to rule and to move. And I'm saying it is not going to happen until there is a total, in some cases it may not be total, but until there is an adequate understanding of why we're hinged on saying no in the first place, on why we're hinged on saying, actually, we're not comfortable with this because this is how we've actually always done it. Until we understand the conversation that's happening around that, even this representation that we see in the future is not going to happen. This is what the law says. The law says stop all of this.
Stop
as
it.
in, it is against the law.
There's
Stop
no
it.
discussion about it.
We're not having a discussion.
This is it.
But
It's
still
the
people
end.
find a way to bring it back into existence.
And these are leadership.
These are leaders. Still
The other day we
hinged
saw
on this culture.
this very prominent woman leader from the Samburu region, and she was on a radio station, and she was saying, look, when it comes to this issue of fighting FGM, I've been at the forefront of fighting FGM, but let's mix our cultures as well. There are some NGOs that have come to this region, and what they are preaching goes contrary to what we believe in as a people, as a Samburu people, as a Maa-speaking people. This is not who we are. Yes, I fight FGM, but also there's some things that these people are saying that are contrary to what we're saying. So when you have a ministry of culture and heritage, and we say that this is a ministry that's supposed to ensure that we are upholding our cultures and our heritage, and then we have other laws that come in and are saying everything else that is called cultural and traditional is evil, is wrong, is against the law, where do we stand as a people? Why aren't we having these honest conversations?
We are having the honest conversations. In fact, that the leader from the Samburu community was speaking up tells you we're having a conversation. But remember, there is another reality we need to look at here. It's called employment. When you talk about these NGOs, the people who work in these NGOs...
They're us.
Precisely. And an NGO comes with a mandate and a predetermined objective that they want to achieve. And that is what the funding is predicated on. Mm-hmm. So that's where the employment factor comes in. Now, sometimes, or most times, for whatever mandate you have to make sense, there has to be numbers. For others, it may be publication. So these Kenyans, being enthusiastic as we tend to be where matters of money are concerned, will go out of their way to do things that they think will guarantee that they keep
receiving this money.
Exactly, because this is the mandate.
Yeah.
And many of them don't understand that sometimes a little truth and reality would trump this thing and say, look, folks, I know this is what we want to do, but the reality is actually this. Okay?
Vitu kwa ground.
Vitu kwa ground, baba, ni different. I'll give you an example. You see, when we talk about figures in HIV, for instance, we talk about prevalence or incidences being the new infections. One of the things that we probably have never had a very clear record of, especially if you're talking about places where there's a high prevalence, is the records exist, but these records have actually never been, should we say, verified and ascertained as to whether the numbers of clients you speak of are repeat or not. For instance, a client could come to go to clinic A and B and C, But there's nothing to marry that information that you know it's the same client in these 3 places.
Yeah.
You just count the numbers without verification as to the possibility of duplication. Now, what is even more interesting is that when you look at these numbers and you throw it into the arena of funding, where people understand that numbers also bring about funding, there are people who will not bother with certain things, because if low numbers means more funding, then you'll report low numbers. If high numbers means more funding, then you'll report high numbers. Now, these are things that have characterized, for instance, the example of funding in HIV. So you hear of figures, you read of them, and you question, you say, so how exactly did you arrive at this? And have you considered this? And where did you do this? What are the questions you normally ask? Which age group are you looking at? And in what regions? And all these questions. Now, when such questions are asked, you suddenly find that the answers are not as forthcoming as the outcome that you are given. And yet, the outcome should have arisen from following these
steps.
Yes. Now, in the same way, matters of culture, especially where, as Ndu has mentioned, you have people who are employed to work in this field and have a certain mandate, you will have conflict. Because you have a mandate that you feel is correct. They have a mandate that they will say is intended for the benefit of, yes, but it has vested interest because it comes with a predetermined outcome that they must achieve. So there will be that conflict.
Yeah, of course, the conflict arises. I mean, then this is the thing, asking us if it is purely conflict and not hinged on any kind of cultural belief or tradition. Of course, that's the excuse that's given. This is our culture, this is our tradition, so this is why we need to continue doing it. Unfortunately, we open the door and we let other people who coming in, and the benefit is purely monetary. They're looking for money. So then that in that case, we can't say that it is culture or tradition. But for a lot of people, this is still the thing, that this is what we know.
Our way of life.
This is our way of life. This is how we've always done things. I would not marry off my daughter at 25. She should be married off by the time she's 10, 11, because she's still young. This is what they're looking for. And also on the side of the men, to have more younger wives is the thing that shows that they are then able to fend for. They are able then to protect. They also then have wealth in certain numbers. But what I'm saying is that at this point, what we see is that we are not going to be able to have a separation between the law and culture. It's not going to happen. And this culture is not just about these things that we're talking about, FGM and other things. Even the basic thing that a woman should not, be going out there. She is to be taken care of in a totally different sector.
The roles,
she doesn't. The roles
of the various genders and age sets.
The historical roles of a woman are still very much alive today, whether they are said openly or not. But I really do believe that in the minds of many, those roles dictate the decisions that are made. Even when we're talking about, this representation that we're asking for or pushing for or clamoring for, those roles still play, and they still do take center stage as far as when a decision is being made. Whether we were saying we are urban and we have reached where it is that we are going in terms of modernity. No. At the end of the day, people, whether in latent...
Middle-income country, that's us.
Latent.
Okay.
Not third world backward.
We are a third world backward banana republic.
So I think it still does. It still does.
And I think for the 66th time, when you get to 100, it'll become true.
This affects decisions that are being made, and I don't think that we need to be surprised or keep banging our heads against the wall and saying, when will this ever end? Until there is a comprehension, it will not. Until there's an understanding that this is where we are coming from, and say, okay, there are ways then to work around it. There are truths then that can be shared. Until that happens, this conversation will continue to happen. So by
and large, what you're saying, Ndu, is the laws that we come up with are not mirroring the reality on the ground.
They're not. Look at what is happening. And we're not talking about one place where it's an isolated issue. Bomet.
It's across the country.
Bomet, Kericho, Narok, Transmara. Across the country, and people are saying, okay, you've brought your law, but at the end of the day, this is what we still believe.
Who we are.
By the way,
law,
those areas you've mentioned are in the same region. So mention others that are not in that region.
Meru, there are cases that have come out of Meru.
Meru, Isiolo,
Kuria,
Samburu.
Kuria is the other side completely.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yes.
You'll be able to take sample from different places. Still, again, the overriding factor being that tradition still trumps the law in this case.
That's what I wanted you to do, because if you mention it and the examples you give are from one region, then you'll say, well, it's these people.
It's a Maasai people. It's a Maas speaking.
But when you now give the examples you've given, you know, if you look at any African community, we are patrilineal, okay? Our cultures are male-dominated. But do you know who the enforcers of our cultures are?
That's very interesting that you say that, CT.
The enforcers are women?
Because the enforcers
Of
and
our
the
culture.
propagators are women. Are women. And it is the woman who is going to have the conversation when her child turns 8. Her daughter turns 8, and she's going to have the conversation. Well, you know, in the next 3-4 years, somebody's going to come and knock in and ask for your hand in marriage, and I'm preparing you for that. You will be. They're the ones who push. It's the women who circumcise.
Yep.
It's the women who circumcise. It's the women who prepare their children for this early marriage. It's the women who go and talk to the other women and say, "I know you have a son. When are you people coming?" That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It is. They are the ones. We are the ones who still push for this culture, and at the same time, we're saying that we want to have a shift from this culture and get to the point whereby we say, even in terms of leadership, we want women to be represented. How are we going to ever reconcile the two without an understanding or a marriage of the same?
So going by the example that you've given us, how we are start stopping all the time on the issue of getting female representation in Parliament because of the realities on the ground, does it then tell you that our leaders have this reality, but at the same time, they're the ones who are enacting these laws? So how do you explain that? They come up with the same laws. They argue, they stand up, they argue for these laws. You know, they push strong debates for these laws, while at the same time, when they walk out of those chambers, they're still practicing the traditional values.
Eric, you're asking us to explain duplicity. It isn't difficult at all to explain, really, if you think about it.
But what is it? What informs it?
What informs it is, from the perspective of a politician, presenting yourself in the light that suits your purpose at that
particular
point in time. Yes.
A conversation continues. Facebook, Spice FM KE. Twitter, Spice FM KE. 0719 012 600. The phone lines are now open. 9:30.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, because Jogo Road is behaving so well, you can actually use Jogo Road to get into the city center instead of sticking on Mombasa Road. Of course, if you're in the middle of Mombasa Road, you definitely will not be able to leave through that. Still, we have the heavy traffic situation on Mombasa Road, starting from the Siokimau Junction, and that is leading all the way down. Other parts of the city, of course, having been behaved quite well today. Thika Road getting into town, of course, not so bad. Muthaiga to town, we do have some traffic though. And then, of course, getting to the Globe Cinema roundabout is not so bad. So, of course, past traffic hour, we still have some sticky situations on Langata Road as well. We'll see how that pans out in a short while. But for now, it's patience that needs to be exercised. Spice FM KE is where you can find us on Twitter. Keep moving, guys.
And let's go straight to the phone lines. 0719 012 600. Going to Kisumu. Joseph, good morning.
Good morning.
How
Good
are
morning.
you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
I've been listening to Spice FMK for quite some time, and today I've really felt compelled to chime in on this conversation.
Karibu.
About African culture vis-a-vis the traditional modern laws.
Yes.
And my opinion is, I really think African cultures are getting a constant whip they don't deserve, because
Oh, we've lost Joseph. Please call back, Joseph. I think you were saying that African cultures are getting a contempt which they don't deserve, and he was about to explain that. 0719 012 is the number to call. Also, remember you can post your comments on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Twitter, at Spice FM KE, at CT Muga, at Nduoko, at Eric Latif. And of course, you join in the conversation. We're talking about our cultures, our traditions vis-a-vis the modern laws and what the modern laws are providing.
Well, yeah, sure, definitely. And I think that we need to, I don't think we're going to be able to move past this. There's no way we'll be able to drop tradition or drop culture. And we see that because we as a nation, you say that, okay, we want to be able to preserve it, right? We have
promote it.
We have ministries that have been set up for the promotion and preservation of the same. There's no way we can say then drop it. And then because of that, then we'll be able to protect the lives of young girls, for example. You can't drop it. So I'm saying at this point, we have to look at synergies crossing for the two. There's no way we're going to be able to do it without it.
It's one or the other.
No,
Back to the phone lines in Nairobi. Wilfred, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
How are you?
Good morning.
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
Fine.
Fine, thanks.
So I've been listening to this topic about early marriages,
Yep.
and I would like to contribute.
Go ahead.
Okay, so first I have to admit, and you've said it over there, that the people who guard patriarchy are women.
Yep.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say is that when we tackle it and we say culture must be balanced by the law, with the law, and there was also this averment that the NGOs that push this topic are funded by the West, which I take offense because our government is funded by Western grants. That is the first thing. The second thing is that we are all taught in English, that we somehow we promote their culture. I mean, it's their language.
Yes.
The other thing is, this is not just based in what NGOs are conceiving. This is based in law. So we are taught law in Kenya, the Children Act, okay, which has it. And when we talk about the African Charter on the Welfare and Rights of the Child, 1990, it's African. It's not West. It's African. We can go on and say, oh, the CRC influenced it, but it's African Charter.
Yeah.
When you go to Article 27, it talks of sexual exploitation of the child. My question is, if we were to bring culture, how will you vary? How will you vary culture to say now the Kenya's obligation when it goes to universal periodic review? We will say the Maasai have this, so let's enter margin of appreciation for the Maasai. The laws have this. How will the state then
harmonize all those different cultures, right?
Harmonize all these and still maintain its status in the global world? You know, that's one. So my take is, I've always championed that let's think African. We've learned the Western way. Let's now think African. But on the rights of the child, it's more complicated. If we are going to marry them because we have to uphold the culture, then we also must tackle that fact that so many women are disinherited in such cultures that they don't have property. That if the breadwinner dies, and that's the man, their children will not be able to secure proper education, but because the women are propertyless, they don't just have the property. So if we are going to take this culture, then let's also read Matrimonial Property Act. Let's read Succession Act. Let's read Domestic Violence. You know, all those acts.
All those are the laws.
Yeah, let's harmonize everything. And when you harmonize everything, you will find that in a patriarchal society, it's so much against women. Secondly, on the issue of two-third gender rule and gender representation, I think the law says elective and appointive position. So the first place we start with is elective. And then in elective, we go to the electorate. What is the composition? We have women. The problem we have today, and I started by saying it, women do not want to elect women. How do you expect a society where women don't elect women, men to appoint more women? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So until the women stop guarding patriarchy, that's why we will have a two-third gender rule.
All right.
Thank you very much, Wilfred. Very good points there.
Very, very good points, interestingly enough, and that's the thing. I mean, we can look at several untils, and I think all of this now comes together. And this is very clear. The patriarchy is interesting enough that is being fought at, is being still at the same time in very many quarters being guarded by women. And until this drops, you're not going to see a change. Unfortunately, we won't.
But some of the things that he's raising, so yes, we have got the African Charter on child protection and all those things, and the laws that we have enacted as well as a country. Those things that we've ratified as a country, they're the laws that we've enacted to go with what we've ratified.
Against our culture.
How do we marry them if they're going against our culture? And I'm saying we need to have a conversation. It's not that we're going to completely, abhor and isolate some things, but let's have a conversation and see how can we align it to, at the same time, promoting our culture.
What aspects? I mean, this would be a different conversation, but what is it in our culture that these things seem to go against? If you're talking about culture, it isn't as though there's one uniform culture in Kenya.
Oh, yeah.
No. It may work in one community, in another it may not work, but that's again a separate argument. The point I think this caller was making, which is a valid one, is that sometimes you have things that seem to contradict what is known as tradition or practice.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that often is the way of change. Change often doesn't come. It doesn't come packaged in a pleasant, shiny form. No, it sometimes comes as something that you perhaps don't particularly like, enjoy, or haven't even thought of because it is strange to you. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't work or that it's bad. It just means it is not something that you've done before. I'm going to give it. Yes.
But how do we marry now? How do we marry? So let's say, leave the children aside. Let's look at the matrimonial laws that we've mentioned. So we've got now the new laws, matrimonial and succession and such, and ownership of property. Disinheritance of women is something that just naturally happens in traditional societies. Because this girl is going to get married and go into that other new homestead. Therefore, she does not have a claim in her father's property.
It worked very well, very, very, very well, until our population started being what it is, and property, which for most people was land, started becoming scarce and scarce because of numbers. So you'd find in the event of a lady being widowed, she would be disenfranchised by her relatives. Her children would be disenfranchised by the brothers or cousins of the man whom she had been married to. There are cases we've heard over and over and over again.
But these are people who are going against the culture because the culture was not allowing that.
The culture had become toothless. You couldn't enforce it. So the law comes in because then you have a more powerful tool for enforcing the rights of this particular individual. Now, the contradiction in that instance would be, this is what culture dictates. For instance, the inheritance of say, land by girls in a family. I personally think it is an excellent law, personally, that my sisters should actually inherit the same portion
as you,
same,
the brothers, right?
Whether they are married or not. As far as I'm concerned, it's their father. If it was my father's land, they have an equal right. It's not that they have less, they have an equal right to me.
What was the wisdom of your culture before that?
The wisdom was what we're stating, because wherever she went
is where she will.
Yes, but among the Luos women, yes,
son,
she was.
And somebody's son is going to inherit.
Not only that, in Luo land, women owned land. You are given land. When you are married, remember, the survival of your family was determined by your skill and your ability to farm. You were given land. It was known that is so-and-so's land. The lady, the woman. Yes. And that was land that your children could also inherit.
So why don't we find ways of marrying those two and seeing culturally this is how things used to be done? And if you look at this is just the Luo culture. If you go around the country, you'll find very many other cultures that thought the same way.
Right, but in this
so
case,
we say
there's no problem.
that this is
with
what
it.
was happening, and let's marry that with the modern laws that we're coming to ensure that we enforce this as what we know as Kenyans is how we lived
in this
traditionally.
particular instance, there's no problem with a woman receiving, this land. If you want to look at it, there are no demerits to this at all.
Yeah.
For her to inherit from her father, none whatsoever. Culture previously prohibited her from having that.
Her father's land, if she was married, she
could not have.
And that's what I'm saying.
To.
And that's what I'm saying. You see, look at it this way. There are 4 sons and 2 daughters, right? So the sons are going to inherit their father's land. The girls are going to get married to other homesteads, and they'll be married by sons who are going to inherit their father's land. So it still ensured that there was a balance. There's nobody who was left without a piece of land. There's nobody who was left without an inheritance. Now the issues would come in when those sons died. And then the girls, the widow were being disinherited.
Right.
Plus her children.
But that was not cultural.
Right.
The culture was not allowing that. The traditions were saying that you protect those children as well.
Yes.
The children of this man who has died are allowed to inherit.
If we take the view that laws actually are created to sort of alleviate or to resolve an issue that has arisen, you will find that in certain cultures, same culture I'm speaking of, they even catered for women who had been married and whose marriages didn't work. They were forward-looking people who knew that the land would be set aside for, say,
anybody who ever came back.
Yes, who came back, you'd be told you can actually go. And even when it came to burial, there were laws and cultures that actually catered for this.
Yes.
What we are discussing has arisen because those cultures and those norms don't make a lot of sense to many people. Now, they don't even think about it. And even these traditions and norms, for many people, they will only think about it if it benefits them. Again.
But then there are those who want to follow that.
Those who want to follow it, I think, tend to follow it.
Why are we coming up with laws that are going to be to disenfranchise those who want to follow this?
Of course, because the light has been shown on the fact or the incidences where, if we look at something like, the land issue. So if somebody comes and her husband dies, and then basically she's put out, she has nowhere to be because that land has then been taken away from her. There you see it's to her detriment. You see a young girl who has been married at the age of 10, and then you have cases like we see around the country of fistula. You have cases of early child when they go into, because they've gone into early labor, and they have, the numbers that we see are quite high. And then you see things like FGM, where the anatomy of a girl has been destroyed. Now, those are the reasons why people have now looked into these cultural practices and said, actually, you know what? Let's talk about this. Maybe it doesn't have to be as terrible as it has been, because we actually see where these people are actually suffering as a result of this cultural practice. Can we have the conversation where we change things a little bit to make sure that the life of this person is protected?
Yes, to protect the life.
Where girls were married off at a very young age, you would find many of those families were also poor. Essentially, if you marry the girl off, there'd be some gain in the form of dowry, hopefully. But usually, even the sons of that family don't have much to inherit. So the issue of the girl coming back to help share, yes, they'll consider it to be a bit of a disadvantage. And the hope is that where they've gone to be married is where they will have. Now, if the place they are married at has issues, can you see the complication that arises? And yet, if everybody stands a chance of inheriting, you're not disenfranchising it. You're just dividing the same thing among everybody. That's what you're doing. Yes. Because one could argue, if you're talking about the rights as enshrined in our constitution, you'd be saying, just by virtue of denying that girl child an inheritance of the father, her fundamental rights have been abrogated.
Absolutely.
Yes. But you'll also have another counter argument to that. It's at 9:45. This is a situation. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, you can call in and join the conversation. 0719 012 600. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
At 13 to 10, good morning. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719-012-600. Call in and chime in on this conversation. We're talking about mixing the two, culture and tradition versus modern laws. And of course, we're looking at how then do you balance between some of those cultural traditions. You see, when you sit here now again, you start, arguing against some of the traditions. So we've argued against FGM. Now we're arguing against inheritance. We're arguing against women in leadership. Where shall we stop?
Actually, if you look at this, you will find that even when these cultures existed, there would be individuals when everybody around them wasn't taking their girl child to school. They would take their girl children to school.
They would take them to school.
So that's what I'm saying, we should find a way of allowing people who want to practice some aspects of culture to continue practicing some aspects of culture, as long as the rights of overall everybody's right is taken care of. Let's go back to the phone lines because I can see people are calling in. Abel, good morning, Abel.
Good morning, Mambo.
Good morning.
Fiti.
You were speaking with Abel.
Yes, Abel.
Okay. Me, I'm seeing that using this modern method, the traditional method, it has come with the time has passed using the traditional method. So we should be using modern methods so that we can be okay and understand how our families are.
So we throw away everything cultural.
Yes.
Okay. Everything goes.
So what should we have in its stead?
Okay, I think nowadays people are born again, so we don't have to use the traditional method. But maybe preserving foods and other things, we can be using traditional method for that.
Okay.
But you do know, of course, Abel, that religion deals with our relationship with the Almighty, while culture talks about the evolutionary process of the way we go about our lives, and religion is part of our culture.
Yes.
Abel, what's your second name? If you don't mind me asking.
Ebusuru. Abel Ebusuru.
Ebusuru.
Yes.
Is there a way that you can explain how you got the name Ebusuru? How are you named?
Okay, I can say that I was named after my grandfather.
This is following tradition.
Yes.
Would you do the same when you're naming your children?
Ebusuru means somebody is courageous.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so my grandfather was so courageous.
Was courageous.
Now, would you be courageous enough in naming your children after, say, your father?
Okay, I can name them, but I cannot name for the name of my grandfather. Maybe I can use this other name that from the Bible, the digital name.
So that's the first name.
Did you say the digital names?
The .com names.
Right.
Abel, have a good day. Have a good day, Abel.
Thank you.
0719-012-600.
Digital. That's
a new one. I must say.
Some ways of balancing between, current and traditional. And this is the thing. If we agree that, I'm going to follow this traditional way of naming my children, how we name our people. But then
I don't think we need to throw out
drop one, keep one.
I don't think we need to throw out traditional practices. I think that this is a baby bathwater situation. You don't want to do that. But I think it is necessary to have an understanding of where they all came from in order for us to then move forward in modern ways. I don't think it will be possible for us to move forward without taking into consideration what has happened before or what was the practice previously. It helps. It lends to the experience.
Even when people talk of religion, these are social constructs. One influences the other and the other influences the other. It is the norm. Even within what we call our cultures, we had what the West refers to African traditional religions. They were just our religions, and they merged with our traditions. Just like this idea of wearing a white dress, there's nothing Christian about it. It is tradition. It is a Western tradition of the issue of the rings, these rings that we wear. Again, it's tradition. It's a certain tradition. It signifies something. And you will adopt to it if you feel or think there's something good in it. But with time, that also evolves. People no longer wear exclusively white garments. People wear colorful African attire. That's evolution. Now, that, again, you could argue is culture influencing a certain practice. With time, it's becoming traditional that when people have marriages, they'll have a traditional marriage, and they will even call it Christian, but they have cultural elements in it. Now, that's an evolutionary process. And all of this will be a tradition because over time, it stops being a one-off. It becomes the norm, so it is a tradition. Now, the meaning may be lost with time, or the meaning may be obscure with time, but usually there's a reason behind it. For instance, why is it that many people, it started off, the first person I actually heard going against this norm of naming people was one gentleman called James Ngugi, who became Ngugi wa Thiong'o. So one could have argued that he began a trend that could have been called the Ngugi wa Thiong'o syndrome. So thereafter, people who were literary giants started calling themselves by their traditional names. Now, West Africa had led in this. There was no James Shoinka. It was Wole Shoinka. Yes. There was Elachi Amadi. Not Henry Amadi. I mean, so there's Duoko, yes. Oh, okay. Okay, I think she knew where I was going with this. Yes. I was going to bring a Trufena into it. Or is it Trufosa?
Scholastica.
Yeah, yes.
You see now.
Okay.
So I mean, I think absolutely, for sure. I don't think we should throw it out, but I think in order for anywhere, you don't just move forward by lurching forward. Of course, you take into consideration what has happened in the past, and then that fuels now your ability to move forward. There's certain things you must have done previously, and having understood, then for you to move forward. And then for us to say then, why is it so difficult? At some point, why was it so difficult to send girls to school? Because there was no understanding of what would the benefits be if we actually did. Then we saw that some fathers,
it wasn't that they were against the girls.
They were not against the girls, no, but they just didn't see the benefits of why should
invest
we
in this?
But then when they started going to school, did we then now see the benefit? Absolutely. Now, when we say things like early marriage and early for young girls, they don't have anything against these girls, but there's certain things that are the mitigating factors. Now, do you see the benefits of maybe allowing these girls to go to school? Do you see them allowing them to develop socially? Can we see the benefit? Yes. Then can we then move forward? By not mutilating a woman's body in the name of FGM, is there something else that we can do? Is there a way in which it can be done to still preserve culture, but then be able to move forward? Yes. Then we're able to take the conversation further. Understanding all of that, taking it into consideration. Now, when we go forward and talk about putting women in positions of leadership, can we understand that you, as the woman, are the one who stands in the way in a lot of cases of this actually happening? Why? Can we look at then historically what had happened over time and say that really, because it's something that is peculiar to you as a people, as a culture. There are other countries where people don't have a problem with it. Woman, man, leadership, go. Right? But understanding the reasons why women were not in positions of leadership historically across the board then would help to fuel the conversation of how we can actually have it be in the future. And as opposed to us guns blazing, fighting all the time, perhaps it's time to take a sit back, a look back and say, okay, where are we really? And what are the reasons why? who is actually fueling this? And can the conversations go in a different direction? And we'll find that in a lot of cases, the answer is yes. And we can actually then change the course of the way in which these directions are going.
Yeah.
I believe so.
You know what is of interest is when people who came from the West looked at our culture, of course it was strange to them. And they thought because they had moved from practices that were similar to ours, that they were more advanced. They were not advanced. They had only changed in a manner that suited their purposes. People actually change in the direction that they find suitable, unless the change, of course, is forced on them. Now, if you look at, for instance, our ways of farming, we've gone full circle, and the West is actually with us. These things we call organic. That's what we have done from time immemorial.
Ours, yes.
Yes, from time immemorial. Now, again, if you look at the so-called preservation of culture, why do you think the West has museums? What do you think museums serve as? It's a repository of those things that we say, yes.
Memories, reminders, yes.
Precisely. Lest you forget. Now, the world over, people have these things. It's just that human beings and their reluctance to accept change and to also appreciate things which are different, when it comes into play, then you get things being demonized. And people feeling that this is the way they should do things. Now, again, remember, when we talk about the girl child, there's something that must be remembered. The disadvantage of the girl child is maybe within certain communities, but in this day and age, the girl child has not just moved ahead, but has probably even overtaken the boy child.
It's trailblazing.
Yes. Oh, true.
Coming up to the top of the hour, thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room this morning. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eric Latif, Nduoko, and CT Muga. Let's tell you about what happens between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. every weekday right here on Spice FM. So you'll be able to join Monique, who will be taking you home on Spice Drive. She has a couple of things that she does on her show. Yesterday, there's something called the Record Rumble. So on yesterday's Record Rumble, she had 2 songs sung by 2 different artists in different eras. And then, of course, she plays them and asks you who has done it better. Yesterday's was Smokey Robinson's Cruising versus D'Angelo's same song, Cruising. And then there's a feature that she has called the Trend Mill. Yesterday, she asked the question, does society judge women more harshly than men when they move on to a new relationship? True or not? Does it? Does it not?
True.
It does, right? So that was the conversation that she was having yesterday in the Trend Mill. When a woman moves on to a new relationship, society looks at her like, why are you doing that? Why not?
Ask the simple question, Eric. If